is so insane.
I got married to a Funko Pop. Whoa. We got wedded, conjoined in a Subway shop. Whoa. I'm married to my Funko Pop. Whoa. We got joined, coitus in a Subway shop. Whoa. Vitamins and biscuits and minerals, they come to me through a tube. My whole life is spent watching on a tube. Whoa-oh. Whoa-oh-oh-oh. Whoa. I'm married to a Funko Pop. Whoa. We got wedded, we got joined in a Subway shop. Whoa. Vitamins and minerals, they come to me through a tube. Vitamins and minerals, they come from me through this here tube. Whoa. I got married to my Funko Pop. Whoa. We got wedded, we got joined in a Subway shop. Whoa. Love at first sight, love at first sight. What shall I do with love at first sight? Put it in my hand, throw it on the ground. Who knows? Just what will I do?
We got wedded, conjoined in a Subway shop. Whoa.
Guinea pig stuff in Africa is so insane. The human guinea pig stuff in Africa is so insane. Is so insane.
what you doing up there? Why you scared? Why you running from every debate? You ran from Andrew and from me. Man, tell the monkey you like they female monkeys with their bananas between their trees, hanging down upside down, frown. That's a smile. That's a smile. Now tell a monkey what you doing to me. Dill a monkey. Dill a monkey. What you doing to me? Dill a mother monkey. Dill a monkey. Oh, monkey. Oh,
Villain upon villain. I'm thinking about Tom Coon. Tom Coon. Tom Coon. Tom Coon. Tom Coon. Seeing you on that screen. Tom Coon, what you do to me? Risky business. This is a risky business talking about you, Tom Coon. But the Riz is the key to the business, Tom Coon. This we got a lot of inside jokes on this channel. Don't hold it against me. I don't really have a thing for Tom Coon. It's just jokes, son. People don't understand the inside jokes. Unmute, dude. From now on, I'm going to start every show with me muted and then me making a mistake on purpose so that you can call me out in the chat. Unmute, dude. Unmute, dude. You people aren't live streamers for a lifestyle, for a job. You don't understand what I go through. You don't understand what it's like. You don't understand how hard it is. This is my life. I'm trying to have a breakdown on screen to create drama and to create a buzz. Dyer has meltdown on stream live. His career is over. Yes. Soy boys celebrating all over the web. Soy boys are creating meme coins to celebrate Dyer's epic meltdown. Oh, you don't know what it's like. Tom Coon. Risky business. Actually, I hit that pretty good. I hit them notes pretty good right there. Welcome, everybody. Jay's meme coin was a rug pull. Shocker, we knew it. We knew it all along. He's worse than Hawk Tua. If I was an Indian, that would be my name. Me name Hawk Tua. Risky business. Welcome, everybody. We're going to have open forum. I didn't realize, where is this Billy Carson debate? I'm having a hard time finding it. Everybody's talking about it, and but I can't find it. Where's the actual debate? Now, the funny part is, this is great. This guy, I don't know who Wes Huff is. I've never heard of this guy until today. But he beat Billy Carson so bad, which we've been making fun of Billy Carson for a while, because this dude is wild. Dude, wow. And obviously, come on, this guy's a character. But this dude beat him so bad that apparently
Billy Carson,
who is a descendant of the gods, is suing this bro right here, this Protestant pastor man. Let's see what he says.
is attempting to sue me. For those of you who don't know, I was invited to interact with Billy on a podcast that he agreed to come on. It was not his podcast, where he was notified beforehand who I was and what we'd be talking about. After that debate took place, Billy attempted to suppress the footage. That didn't really work. I've released clips from that conversation. Well, Billy does not want you to see those clips and has sent me a cease and desist letter. I was really hoping that this could be an opportunity for Billy to learn, to see the major errors that he's been repeating and turn this into a learning experience. I even offered to follow up with Billy in order to show him how and where he could find accurate and credible resources in order to make sure that what he was saying was verifiably correct going forward in the future, so he and his audience could learn and proceed knowledgeably. Billy did not agree. But unfortunately for Billy, agreeing to a debate, losing that debate, and feeling embarrassed about that loss does not constitute legitimate grounds to litigate. Billy.
Now, this is just funny, because this is what happens to extremely arrogant, deluded people, is that they're so confident in their overconfidence and not in their actual skill set or knowledge, that when they get humiliated, they experience a kind of a break, a kind of a meltdown. And everybody on the internet knows that a sus, shady internet type of person is the very person who immediately goes to trying to have a lawsuit when they lose a debate. Thank you. Hot espressos ready to order. Thank you, babe. And it turns out, yes, as Piggy Doo says in the chat, Wes has demonstrated with absolute logical certitude that Billy is in fact not a king. In fact, in Billy's case, it is accurate to say we actually was kings, past tense, but no more. We is not kings, and sometimes it do be like that. But I gotta see the actual debate. So they're saying it's on some other podcast. But I don't want to watch some other goofball like this guy reacting to the debate. So maybe let's see if he's got a link to the debate. I guess I should have found this beforehand. I assumed it would just be on YouTube. So let's see. Here we go. Full debate right here. Unavailable. What the heck? Did the person who hosted the debate actually pull it down? Oh my gosh. Because of this goofball's lawsuit threats. This is so stupid. So I guess we got to watch this guy's reaction to the thing.
The Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
does anybody have an actual clip? Like maybe somebody in the chat tell me where. Maybe we should let's just do Ruslan's highlight, because that's probably the highlight of it.
Billy Carson does not want you to...
Now we're going to talk about this debate, and we're going to talk about, of course, the Ubi Petrus Eric Ybarra, much anticipated, long awaited debate, years in the making, years in the mix. We're going to have some criticisms. We're going to have some appreciations. We're going to look at weaknesses, strong points, in terms of the highlights of that as well. That one was really long and it was very hyper precise, so I don't think we'll have time to get to like all of it. So we're going to hit the highlights of that. We'll probably do the opening statements and then the clips that I clipped and that Luigi clipped from the Ibara Ubi debate. And then we'll open it up to people who want to ask questions or who would like to actually debate. And that's for anybody out there. If you want to challenge me, if you want to make your case, make your argument. If you got a Billy Carson argument you want to make, go for it. You think he was a king? You got proof? Bring it. If you want to bring your Roman Catholic arguments where you think Ubi lost, if that is in fact what you really think, it will be open forum. In fact, if you're Muslim, if you are atheist, we will have those up later. I don't know why this is automatic, because I did 2 gaming streams. This has automatically situated me in the field of gaming, and this is not gaming. We're going to call this comedy. Today's show is going to be a mix of debate and comedy, baby. Welcome, everybody. If you would hit like and share. So let's get to the highlights of the Billy Carson, Wes Huff debate. And man, how much blow drying does Wes Huff do to get his hair to do that? Wes Huff is going to singularly bring back mousse and gel. There's no way a white dude's hair can do that without blow drying and using mousse and using gel together. That's like, I don't know. Something's going on. And we got 3 interesting hairstyles from this. We got the Ruslan kind of millennial, garden patch up top. We got the Billy Carson with the classic 80s black dude with the black dude mustache, goatee going. And we got Wes Huff's 90s mousse gel thing going on all at once. So we got 3 interesting hairdos. I got to get a haircut because I want to keep mine, with my Van Damme aesthetic vibe going, and so it's growing out, and so I'm getting back into Vanilla Ice preacher haircut, which I don't like anymore. I'm not a Vanilla Ice preacher, although I will preach the virtues of Vanilla Ice. I'm not a Vanilla Ice preacher, if you understand. Jamie says she likes it. Well, I feel like a fake TV preacher with this stupid haircut, because they always have that big, pompadour. It's like Elvis and TV scam preachers are the people with this haircut. I gotta grow out that fake Leon hair where it hangs down like 2003 Keith Urban, where it's like hanging down in my face. Leon! Yeah, so somebody found the full video. I think we're gonna go with the highlights though, because I don't know how long this video is, but let's check out the highlights from Ruslan here.
This debate. Billy Carson is trying to bury this debate, and he's running into some roadblocks, and there's legal action being threatened and taken, and this is where we're at. So go ahead and play this.
According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Okay, first of all,
when you say
this is so these are the types of claims he makes.
Yeah.
According to the Sinai Bible,
Now, to be clear, we've been busting on Billy Carson, or should I say Billy Carson, for a long time. So, this is nothing new to our sphere. And I will remind you that as soon as we saw this dude a year ago, months ago, whenever it was, we was cracking up. So here's another channel up there that's got the debate if you want to watch the full debate. But I just have to remind everybody that, we've been laughing about this nonsense. Let's see. Let me go back to here. No, that's Diddy. I'm getting Diddy and Billy Carson mixed up. Right here. Okay. And there was another video even before this one. In fact, I thought Billy Carson was so funny that I actually this was a second video. This is not the original Billy Carson, right? With his.
Can you show me?
Right here.
Within the
People say, you never debate with Jewish guys. Well, this episode right here has a debate with a Jewish guy. What are you talking about? Jewish guys never typically come to debate anyway. So go watch this old one right here where we was laughing about this stuff months ago. Anyway, let's get back to Ruslan, because, it's just really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you have to be totally not self-aware to think in our internet days that you're not going to look like a complete goofus if you try to sue somebody right after your debate that you lost. The whole internet knows and can see what you're up to and what happened. It's obvious to everyone. So it's amazing to me that he would even do this move. It's so silly. It's like, didn't Brendan Schaub? I don't have anything personally against. I don't know Brendan Schaub. Never talked to him. I will say that I appreciate Sam Tripoli shouting me out on his podcast. But I think it's pretty obvious that Brendan Schaub made this mistake move when he got made fun of, or I don't remember what was happening. They said he wasn't funny or whatever. And then he was like threatening to sue people. I mean, this is just like basic bitch mistake move 101. So it's just really odd to me that, but I think if you're a totally delusional sort of, I don't know if Billy Carson really believes what he talks about or if he's just saying made up stuff. I mean, I don't know what his motives are, but if you are totally controlled by your delusional pride and you've created your own cult, I think you're just kind of a slave to the passions and you just can't even like control yourself. I guess that's what's happening because this is just such a stupid move.
Jesus wasn't crucified. Of course, if Jesus wasn't crucified, then he couldn't have been resurrected. These are the sorts of claims he made. The issue with these claims is they're easily debunkable.
According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically? Refer to the Sinai Bible. Would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus?
This is my first thought is what the heck is he talking about? A lot of times, believe it or not, these kind of wacky goofball guys can throw you for a loop in a debate. And we've had so many debates over here with open forums that I can literally be thrown for a loop with some kind of wacky goofball guy because it's so out of left field and I have no idea what he's talking about. Hey, bro, that Sinai Bible said that there wasn't no Jesus, though. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Codex Sinaiticus? Codex Vatican? What are you even talking about? The Sinai Bible? All right. Well, I remember one time a few years ago there was a Celtic Egyptian study Bible. Somebody just made up. I mean, it was a real study Bible that you could buy, but it was just obviously like just a bunch of made up nonsense, right? You can buy like the feminist Skittles gender neutral Bible, right? So I like that doesn't really mean anything that you talk about the Sinai Bible. I could go get I'll bust out my Celtic Egyptian study Bible. By the way, let's see if that still exists because I'm gonna get me one and start quoting it. Celtic, or it's the Egyptian Celtic Study Bible. I'm not joking. This was a real thing, and if I recall, it was going around the idiot conspiracy sphere maybe 10 years ago. What do you know? Here it is. You can still get. Oh, here's the people that made it up. Okay, I'll trust these people for sure. Yikes. She looks like him with a wig. I think that's just a Photoshop of the copy paste of the same person. The Colburn Bible is a combination of Egyptian Celtic writings that compare to the Christian Bible with it. So it's like a idiotic, like scam thing, obviously. All right, let's get back to Billy Carson.
Like the codex that comes. Okay, that's why I was trying to get some clarification because I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office.
Okay. Okay, first of all, slight flex.
I mean, the whole thing is a flex. He's like, what specifically are you referring to? Are you referring to Connecticus,
Codex Sinaiticus. And then he pulls out.
He pulls it out.
He pulls out a photocopy version of the entire thing.
That's great.
I have it here. And the only reason I asked for clarification is because Sinaiticus in particular is just a 4th century Greek manuscript. Its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. When you say that it...
And a lot of translations are created from this Codex Sinaiticus earliest kind of.
I mean, this shouldn't even really be up for debate. This is like such a basic mistake move that, I mean, this guy really embarrassed himself at this point. So, I mean, I understand we have to do debates with these kind of goofballs because they trick a lot of people. And if I recall, Billy Carson is mainly popular on TikTok, I think. I mean, he might be popular on Instagram too or something like that. But, I mean, and guys, we have experienced the eighth circle of hell that is TikTok, Dante's Inferno that is TikTok. You guys have seen those live streams where we go in and invade TikTok and we debate the TikTokers. It's rough. It's rough. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that's where Billy Carson is the most popular. But, I mean, this is already looking rough.
Compilation of the Greek manuscripts, right? Because all these were different letters and scrolls.
So it's just a compilation of the earliest Greek manuscripts
put in kind of a book form, I believe.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so because before they were just letters and scrolls, so someone finally compiled the copies of the copies of the copies of the copies, right? Because there's multiple manuscripts going out, being sent out, and then they finally compiled it.
Copy.
You do textual criticism by going back
There's
to the
just
oldest
one
into the
thing I
latest. And you
wanna
find out
say.
that there's not much difference, and they compiled it all into the Codex Sinaiticus.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there. I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus or John 19 or any of the other ones. So my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently.
First of all, Wes is so patient and so loving.
Yeah. He's like, can I have a clarifying question? I'm so confused by what you're saying.
I can't be this guy. This is why I tend not to like debates unless they're in person.
Yeah.
Because I can't be this charitable over the.
Well, Ruslan has invited me in studio, so we'll find out if he's that charitable in person. I believe that he probably will be. But I think they're also going to realize that I'm not actually mean in person or online. It's jokes, son. I'm a clown. But I'm a serious clown.
Internet. This is a skill that Gavin Ortland has. I'd say Trent Horn has. Wes has. I'm a crash it.
So in Ruslan's mind, the only way to be a good debater is to never use rhetoric, never make jokes, never make anyone mad, always talk with an NPR voice. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But at the same time, there is a time and a place for the jokes, the jabs, the rhetoric, getting heated, getting aggressive. For example, in the Ibara debate, that was very calm and peaceful. And I felt like for the first half, for what I've seen, Ubi was a little less aggressive than I would have been, especially with Ibara. And then towards the end, the second half, he got more and more aggressive and eventually just sort of called out some of the bull crap from Ibara, which when I had my debate with Ibara, that's, of course, what Ubi referenced in his debate. Because a lot of people don't know, like, the backstories and the going back and forth and on and on with people. And one thing that I think a lot of people are starting to pick up on, I think this happened a lot with Lofton. You know, when we were originally interacting with Lofton back in 2017, 2018, everybody kind of just assumed that, oh, I just hopped on there and was mean to Eric Ibara or something like that. And then I just was mean to Lofton. But then people started realizing that, no, actually what they were doing was doing these sort of underhanded, trying to get me deplatformed from other channels and other discussions, trying to get, other Orthodox clergy defrocked. They were doing all this nasty stuff in the background, which was not at all the public, gentle face that they were presenting to the audience. So I think people have to realize that a lot of what you see people presenting themselves as on the internet is a persona. It's fake. And especially, I'm not knocking Ruslan, but in this domain of evangelicalism, this syrupy evangelical stuff, like, this is what they thrive on. They thrive on that performative appearance of piety and that performative appearance of, brother, I just love you so much that I want to act. I want to do a Shakespearean theater performance of how much I love you and how humble I am. Look into my eyes, Internet. Don't you see how much I love you? If I weep on camera for you, will you believe that I'm truly a humble servant of our Lord Jesus Christ? Look into my eyes, friends. I am praying for you right now. Right? I mean, this is the kind of just fakery that, ironically, even atheists see through this stuff, right? It's like atheists can... What?
Stop hypnotizing people.
I want you all to tithe to me because I love you and I pray for you. Right? Paul Washer is like the essence of this nonsense. And all of these evangelicals fall for this Paul Washer bullcrap. Look, that's not me, man. I've seen that stuff for so many years growing up evangelical. When I see that stuff, it makes me want to make fun of you. That's what I see. Because after a while, as you grow up, as you get older, especially if you're a man, this stuff comes off as super fake, effeminate, Skittles. It's just annoying. And it's not authentic. It comes off as performative. But I think a lot of young people, naive people, this fools naive people. So, no, I mean, I just don't. This whole sphere of these people that like have their circles and their cliques that, Lofton really wanted to be in those circles and whatnot. It's just, a lot of it's not authentic. And a lot of y'all fall for it because you think that the public face that people have is really them, and it's not. And that's why in the situation with Ibara and Lofton, I came on that stream because Ibara was basically bullcrapping. Like, he was just making up nonsense. Jay won't debate me. I've asked him many times to debate. And I was watching that live stream live, and I'm like, Eric, I've sent you, I don't know how many messages on Facebook asking you to debate on other platforms. And what Eric meant was, I won't debate him on Lofton's platform. Well, I don't consider that neutral, because we could have debated on a Protestant platform or anybody else's channel. But Eric meant that I had to debate on Lofton's channel, and that was back when he had his show with Lofton or whatever. It's just like, what you guys don't see is the background stuff of so many of the people in this domain, this religious YouTube online sphere. Like, they're so effeminate, and they act like it's like the most passive aggressive soy man stuff. And I've ranted about this so long, I'm not going to rant about it again, but just don't believe all that. Look, what you get with me is what you see. I am mean, whatever that means, meaning I like to make jokes, and I'll make a fat joke about Ibara, and I don't feel bad about it. But then they use this as this, oh, look at he's not pious or charitable. Well, what is charity equated to being nice? I don't understand. No. And by the way, I just list myself as a comedian anyway. I don't claim to be a theologian. I'm an internet theologian like Dr. Galvin Ortland. I mean, doesn't everybody kind of sense a lot of these people seem kind of Skittles, man? Don't you think a lot of these people may not be straight?
If you say something crazy, I'm gonna crash out over the internet.
Yeah.
In person, it's different.
Yeah, over the internet, you're gonna be like,
Billy, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, that's not actually the case, though, because I've done several in-person debates. When I debated David Gordon, who, by the way, is bigger than me and probably would whip my ass, I mean, I didn't hold back on him or the Boomer Baptist pastor in that three-way debate. Y'all remember that debate, right? I didn't hold back on any of them. And I was just as heated, just as normal in person as over the internet.
Yeah. Where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
so he just completely changed the claim.
It wasn't Codex Sinaiticus. It wasn't the Sinai.
So now what, he's referring to some pseudepigrapha, some Gnostic text? I mean, I think Billy was trying to save face there.
It was the Gospel of Barnabas.
So he just completely changed the claim. And
What?
That doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible. The Sinai Bible. The Sinai Bible. But then you go to the Sinai Bible. In the Sinai Bible. And the Sinai.
So here's 20 quotes of the Sinai Bible. This guy literally, I mean, imagine how many people fell for this nonsense. Now, TikTok, I do believe the numbers are greatly inflated on TikTok. I don't believe that everybody has 5 million likes on their nonsense posts. But there's still a lot of idiots on TikTok. And again, it's the lowest quality and tier of the commenters and debaters. So I'm not surprised that Billy Carson had a zillion TikTok followers. But notice how many people do you think he duped with his preposterous Sinai Bible claim? Like what? The Sinai Bible. What are you talking about? He didn't even know what he's talking about. He probably just read this, or he probably saw, this is some kind of zeitgeist level stuff. He probably saw zeitgeist and thought, I can craft this into a new story of whatever his, we was Kang's theology was.
Bible. According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Yeah, actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there.
This is a claim he's made everywhere.
I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas. Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
I've actually worked with, there are 2 manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas.
Okay, so
He's like,
one,
I actually reincarnated, but my past life wrote the Gospel of Barnabas. And
I hate to say it, but if you're not closing more clients on the phone or Zoom for your online programs or services, the problem isn't actually there.
So one, he makes this outlandish claim of the Sinai Bible. That's not in the Sinai Bible, right? Mm-hmm. It's not in there. That's been debunked. So then he goes to the Gospel of Barnabas.
Yeah.
Now that sounds, Barnabas? Well, Barnabas was in Acts and he moved around with Paul. And
yeah, that sounds legitimate.
That sounds legitimate. Well, pull it back and look at Billy completely to the horror of this entire situation. What?
He really got cooked, huh?
Bro, it was
I
bad.
misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
Hey, first of all, props to Billy for at least misquoted, for acknowledging that he misquoted. Props to him.
Crucified in that Bible.
I've actually worked with, there are 2 manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have 2 copies of. One is in Italian and one...
Now, I understand the performative optics of this touting of how patient and peaceful and loving supposedly people are being in these debates like this. But, I mean, anybody with any discernment could have already seen and should have already known, as we mentioned months and maybe even a year ago about Billy Carson, this is like con man level stuff. So, I mean, this idea that, we got to just be nice to everybody, including all the con men, like, you don't have to, where's the rules that you're supposed to be nice to a con man who's literally blaspheming every day? I mean, it's just crazy. These ridiculous standards, and I don't know, it's like the Ubi debate, though. I think that the debate, as we'll talk about here in a moment, the Ubi debate was so hyper precise that 90% of the debate went over the heads of 90% of the audience. So that's the difficulty there. So in that situation, when you got a bunch of 90% of the people have no idea what's being debated, they're going to judge the debate on the basis of the body language. And so, you have, for example, Ubi's, as far as I'm aware, first video television appearance. So he was probably a little bit nervous for being on camera for the first time ever, perhaps. And maybe that would affect his body language, but it has nothing to do with the content of what he was arguing. So, I don't know. Debates are a funny thing. And the more hyper precise they are, the more difficult it is, I think, to convey to the audience who is and isn't winning. But in this situation, it's different because probably Billy Carson's never actually interacted with an actual scholar. And I don't know much about Wes Huff, but he appears to be a textual scholar, I'm guessing. So, yeah, I mean, like, how did you think this debate was going to go? This is pretty amusing, really.
It's in Spanish. Not to be confused with either the...
First problem. What's the first problem?
Those weren't the original.
They're in Italian and Spanish,
yeah,
fam.
Those are very... those weren't the original.
Barnabas didn't
Italian
speak Italian
and
or Spanish, fam.
That's crazy.
I mean, this is the level of stupid where we're at, where, like... I mean, that's very far removed from Koine Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew, Latin, and he's talking about Spanish and Italian. I mean, Billy Carson doesn't have a basic knowledge of basic history, but he's able to dupe a lot of people with these weird conspiracy claims. And this is one of the problems of the whole conspiracy community. There's so much idiocy in this domain that it's really sad. I mean, I cover these topics a lot, but I've been in the world of conspiracy and alt media for a long time, and I can assure you that it's full of idiots, it's full of disinformation, it's full of con men and just ridiculous Billy Carson type nonsense. And by the way, Billy Carson he's like a black version of Akaria S. Remember Akaria S? She was saying Billy Carson type stuff 15 years ago, and she was on YouTube, and she was, She was like Zeitgeist levels. In fact, I think Zeitgeist might even cite Icaria S, right? So what's funny is that the stuff that he's repeating isn't new. It's just tweaked to his personal, I don't know, We Was Kang's model or whatever his position is. But it's just repeated like Zeitgeist Icaria S stuff from 15 years ago.
That's crazy.
Go ahead.
It's like me, it's a spaghetti.
Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are two apocryphal documents from the 2nd century. But the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery. In chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem. It shows no actual indication of coming from or even having knowledge of first century Jewish understanding.
Burnout. We all experience it at some point. It's so important to me that I've actually been working on it in therapy. In fact, with the help of BetterHelp, I've...
YouTube thinks I need therapy. They keep sending me this therapy ad. So thank you, algorithmic deity, who has psychoanalyzed me to realize that I need what I need. I wonder why I need therapy according to the AI overlords. Yeah. So again, this is probably the essence of the debate. You've got Billy relying on, first of all, a made-up Bible of Sinai, and then you've got him switching over to Gospel of Barnabas. Which does he mean the Epistle of Barnabas? I mean, what is he talking about? And no, but I've never heard of anyone accepting the Gospel of Barnabas unless this is one of these like Gnostic texts. I mean, obviously it's a super graphical text, but I've never heard of anyone who believes in it, except perhaps people who believe in the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Judas, all these sort of pseudo texts. This is why you need, by the way, the tradition of the church. Now, I'm not faulting Wes Huff for making textual arguments and showing from internal evidence that the Gospel of Barnabas is a forgery, because obviously I'm sure it is. And the fact that Billy Carson says, well, it's written in Spanish and Italian, again, just demonstrates his idiocy, since that's hundreds of years removed from the first 4 or 5 centuries of the church and the translations that the ancient church had. At the same time, it's like, okay, Wes, but like you also are missing a key component that Billy also doesn't have. And if you don't have the tradition and testimony of the church, then what happens is, by default, in the Protestant world, you're really just left up to random Protestant scholars. How do you know which Protestant scholars to follow about the canon? Because it ranges from conservative to higher criticism, and it's all over the place. So the point, though, I'm making here is about what we call normative authority. Did the apostles have authority to make judgments? Did Jesus set up a body of people that have what we call normative authority that could make judgments about these kinds of things? Or did Jesus just leave it up to everybody to fend for themselves and to try to figure out what the canon is and what the right list of books is? And I guess we all got to go get PhDs and be Wes Huff to know the canon of Scripture. Now, doesn't that seem kind of absurd? Doesn't it seem like we wouldn't? And by the way, wouldn't we have to reinvent the wheel every generation too? Every new generation can't trust that the previous generation got it right because only the apostles were infallible. They're all dead. So why didn't Jesus leave a normative, competent authority within his church? And no, I'm not talking about the papacy, because we're going to see in a minute that didn't end up being a competent, coherent thing for the Roman Catholics either, when we look at the Ibara Ubi debate. But I'm just pointing out that while obviously there's no doubt that Wes is making a fool out of this goofus, I'd really like to hear Wes's Protestant arguments for why we're supposed to follow rabbinic Jews in terms of the canon of Scripture and not the apostles.
So it's not.
It gets better. It gets better. This is light.
It's not corroborated by any of the other writings, obviously.
And
all right,
it's written
this
in
redheaded dude is getting on my nerves, so we're going to fast forward to the debate,
which was written in 1314. We don't have any.
So he's just saying this is like a Christian fan fiction of Dante's Inferno
from 13.
was that Ruslan's real laugh? Is that a real laugh? Like, whose laugh was more of a charity laugh? Like when Sam Triplet, or Ruslan's laugh there. That was a forced laugh I've ever heard one.
800.
Wow.
Evidence
But
prior.
he presents it as, well, oh, my bad, it was the Gospel of Barnabas.
The Gospel of Barnabas,
implying
as if
Gospel of
it's-
Barnabas is written in the first century. Not maybe he wasn't directly implying, but this is 1,200 years later.
So it's a
Implying
1300,
that it
yeah.
is a
All right,
book
we got it.
that because of the Council of Nicaea,
It was left out.
It was left out, but it is actually so revealing.
To the 14th century.
Now, these Protestants are laughing about Billy Carson and the Council of Nicaea, but the irony is that Ruslan and his co-host don't even know what's in the Council of Nicaea, because I guarantee they haven't read the canons of Nicaea. Because if they read the canons of Nicaea, they would realize that the Nicene Creed is not just what's produced by the Council of Nicaea. There's canons, church law. And everything in the canons of Nicaea refutes Protestantism. There's nothing Protestant at all. You've got episcopacy, you've got the diaconate, you've got the altar, the Eucharist. You've got all of these things in the canons of Nicaea that are not Protestant. And yet they're laughing at Billy Carson as if they have a connection to Nicaea as Protestants. No, you don't. Now, you might intellectually profess the deity of Christ, but you don't profess the rest of what's in Nicaea. So you're not really in a much better position than Billy Carson in terms of arbitrarily picking and choosing from history, Ruslan.
So I'm a
This is amazing.
He didn't know that those were the same words. The Gospel of Barnabas paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. We don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century. So I'm a historian. Yep. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. We have...
Billy Carson's face to this whole thing looks like someone that's asking an accountant about tax information. Like, he's kind of like...
All right. This redheaded guy is getting on my nerves. If I do go on Ruslan's show, I'm going to be uncharitable to the redheaded guy. Now, that's a joke that I'm making, and I guarantee you that they'll probably say, I can't let you on the show, Jay, because of the uncharitable comments you made to my redheaded co-host. When obviously I'm making jokes. See, this is how these people act.
Beings that are coming down similar to Jesus coming down, except the beings are coming down with advanced technology. Jesus is coming down in a manger as a humble babe.
So this is what I guess they're getting now to the ancient alien stuff that Billy Carson promotes.
Hello, right?
Why are we even having to debate Billy Carson? You see what I'm saying? It's like when Matt Walsh put out his "What is a Woman?" Oh yeah, we owned them, dude. We owned all them people that was arguing, and a man could become. And I'm like, the fact that you're having to make a documentary about what a woman is means that we've lost in the culture already. The fact that you gotta refute Billy Carson means that we are way down the rabbit hole. We are way down the downward spiral. Okay, to quote Trent Reznor, okay?
Lower technology, right? And so that's the issue. Like, Jesus,
we're gonna be having like documentaries and debates that 2 + 2 is 4, and then people are gonna be like, "Oh, we own the math deniers, dude! Suck on that, libs! Drink my tears, libs! We proved that 2 + 2 is 4." We're going to base right-wing resurgence, baby.
Coming in vulnerable, they're coming in powerful. So it's like it has to be inverted. You know what I mean? It has to be it has to be inverted. And so he has to attack the true story, which is Jesus, Emmanuel, God among us. And that's how he set himself this trap by consistently attacking Christianity, and he finally got his card pulled.
That's crazy.
Go ahead.
Single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. I have a facsimile behind me of P66. This debate
reminds me of me debating Pedro. Pedro was like looking down the whole time like he was embarrassed, right? And Wesley Huff looks like Wesley Huff looks like a damn drill sergeant from Starship Troopers. I feel like he's going to be telling me to go, shoot the space bugs or something. In fact, he is basically shooting space bugs spiritually, because Billy Carson's worldview is like Starship Troopers theologically, right? So it's like, this is like theology Starship Troopers over here with Casper Van Diem facing off against, alien space bug theology of Billy Carson.
Late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John, and it has the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that.
So
now, this is the text from the 1300s, bro. I mean, like, if it's from the 1300s, then it's not close to the first 3 centuries. You see what I'm saying? I mean, come on, dude. What's up with this dude's jean shirt, by the way? A button-up jean shirt? This is Ruslan's, like, I'm going to reach out to the working class bros out there with my jean shirt, redheaded ginger man here. My ginger everyman here.
He pretty much conceded. And so, like, all right.
If you say it's a forgery, I'm going to go with that. Then what ends up happening is he basically says, that's only 1/10 of what I talk about. That's only a small percentage. We don't care all the other stuff you're teaching. We care about the stuff you're teaching about Christianity.
Yeah.
That's our beef with you, bro. Okay.
I care about all the ancient alien knowledge. That's just a lot more interesting. Let's get to that stuff. Let's talk about the, we was gods of flying pimped out pyramids. That's what I want to hear about. I want to know where the pyramids at. I want to know where the gold at. I'm gonna uproot that pyramid. I'm going to get the gold and I'm going to trick out my pyramid as I fly through space in a pimped out pyramid. That's what I want. And that's what the audience wants, Ruslan. I can't understand why you don't see that. We want tricked out space pyramids made of gold.
Last clip.
Crazy.
Ain't this good?
They discovered the book of Jesus. They discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary. A little controversial, but they claim that this is...
They discovered the book of Jesus' wife at Harvard Seminary. Do you remember the story? I've told this story many times of the Gnostic woman. I think she was at Harvard, either Harvard or Princeton. There was a PhD woman who found some sort of feminist Gnostic gospel, and it was this was like 20 years ago. It was touted. It's mentioned in Hoffman's volume 2. I can go get the exact reference here in a little bit because I forget the name of her book, but it's like 2003. Some woman. I found this was in the. Y'all don't remember this, but in the 2000s when Dan Brown's gibberish came out, there was this fad of Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Judas, Dan Brown, right? The secret code of blah blah blah. Right? All this stuff was really hyped then. And this woman put out her version of it, some professor at, I don't know, Skittles University, wherever she was. And she had found this secret gospel, and she had translated it, and it was all made up. And when they confronted her about it, this is a great insight into the left, by the way. They said, how did you think it was intellectually honest as an academic to claim that you had found this ancient proto-feminist gospel? And she said, well, but it was against the patriarchy, and so it was justified. And I don't need justification because anything against the patriarchy is therefore justified. And so I was in the right, even though it was all made up nonsense, because I'm fighting the man. Literally, that was her argument. Anyway.
An accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then that's true. It adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified.
So the gospel.
So what is? So you see what he did? Oh, it's at the Harvard Library.
Yeah.
So that's like the credibility anchor.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other nonsense sus stuff coming out of Harvard too. Like one thing that's ironic about Billy Carson citing the fact that it's at the Harvard Library. Everything that Billy Carson says is 100% against anything establishment. Right? I mean, it's the most wacky space theology, space opera stuff. But then he's gonna slide in this fact that there's some manuscript at Harvard. Well, bro, you don't like Harvard doesn't believe anything you say. And by the way, I don't care what Harvard says anyway. I mean, Harvard's a total CIA, university. It's a bunch of nonsense. But it's just funny that Billy Carson, who says the craziest New Age we was kangs, space gods, alien theology, would try to slide in a Harvard reference when everything he says is 100% against anything that would be at Harvard.
Right now,
actually, I take that back. I mean, if Harvard is putting out Gnostic gospels like that other woman, and I mean, maybe Billy Carson should be the chair of the theology department at Harvard. I'm going to take that back. I literally want to see a We Was Kangs department at Harvard, and I want to see Billy Carson in that chair. And by the way, it's not going to be a chair that's a rolling, gamer professor chair. It's going to be a damn golden throne with jewels in it, because it's a space god We Was Kangs chair. That's why.
Watch what Wes does.
Jesus' wife is in the Harvard Library. However, the reason we know it's also not legitimate is because even though the manuscript, the papyrus that it's on, was carbon dated to the 4th century, the text was actually copied from a PDF version of the Gospel of Thomas known as Grondin's Interlinear. And there.
Can we stop with the self-care weeks? Like, what if we did adult weeks instead? Think about it. Instead of
Ruslan must be racking it
laying
up
in
with
bed
ads.
and rotting away, we literally just
like the fifth ad in like a 15-minute video.
Copy from a PDF, like it's as new as the internet.
I think so.
Yeah, it's like people haven't figured out yet that in the religious domain there are con men and frauds and forgeries. Ask the Vatican. I mean, the Vatican was forging documents way before internet bros were forging documents, okay? The Vatican was printing meme coins way before it was doing document rug pulls, way before crypto nerds on the internet were doing it. Way before Hawk Tua was doing it. Me name Hawk Tua. That's my Indian name, by the way, in official Indian parlance. And I don't mean they took the stones from here, Indian. You know what I mean. Y'all know what I mean. I'm talking about American red-blooded, born and raised Indians. Those kind, the real kind. I'm talking about Daniel Day-Lewis, last of the Mohicans, those real Indians.
So it's not even like in the 1300s type of copy. It's like a 1990s copy. It's like a 2005 copy.
It is good.
There was a mistake in the Coptic text of Grondin's Interlinear that was copied into the Gospel of Jesus' wife. We can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form. I think we need to make sure that we're going toward not just early sources, but actually credible sources. And unfortunately, neither the Gospel of Barnabas nor the Gospel of Jesus' wife are credible sources and agreed upon by not just the vast majority of scholarship, but I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography, who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
That's fair enough. I can respect that. So let's go into the Old Testament a little bit.
One time for Wes Huff. Protect.
I thought we were going to a MGM sports bet ad with all that cheering in the background. I thought Ruslan's going to start pimping out MGM sports betting. Like, what was that? What was that sound? A crowd sound effect. Okay, I think that's the essence of this. I mean, I'm glad we had Ruslan's 11-minute breakdown, because I sure as heck am not going to sit through however long this was, 2 hours of Billy Carson's. I wish we could have got more space alien stuff, because that would have been a lot more interesting. You know what I mean? Let's get a little more action. Let's get some space battles. Let's get some Starship Troopers. We already had Billy Carson basically debating Casper Van Diem there. Does nobody get these jokes? Anybody get the jokes I'm making? Nobody's seen Starship Troopers? Nobody knows what I'm talking about? Because I thought that was a pretty good one. Come on. Wes Huff looks like Casper Van Diem. Come on now. Tell me he doesn't. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Nobody's seen Starship Troopers? Was anybody in the 90s? Am I the only one that was in the 90s? Look, right there. Billy Huff. There's Billy Huff right there. He's over here pre-supping Christmas Jones. What's her name? I don't know any actors' real names. All I ever think about is their movie names. So Denise Richards, right? Christmas Jones from James Bond, right? So Casper Van Diemen's over here pre-supping, Gary Busey's son. You can tell you can identify Gary Busey's son by his teeth because he has his dad's teeth literally put into his head. And you got Christmas Jones over here, and then Casper Van Diem. And again, it was just like Starship Troopers, except it was a spiritual Starship Troopers. And Billy Carson had that alien game. His alien game was not on point in that debate, was it? No, it was not. So once again, Jay's analysis is vindicated because we were making fun of Billy Carson freaking a year ago. So anyway. All right, let's move on to the next debate. We got some highlights we're going to hit here. This one is really long, 3 hours, so we're not going to hit all this. We're going to hit the highlights. Ubi versus Ibara. So hotly anticipated. So many years in the making. Before we get into it, my first criticism is I wish this debate had not been so hyper precise. But I suspect that Ibara probably would only do a hyper precise debate. The problem with the hyper precise debate is that this went over 90% of the audience's, like 90% of the content went over 90% of the audience's head, I think. Because the debate was specifically the papacy of Pope Vigilius in 5th and 6th centuries. So was the Vatican I concept of the papacy present in the 5th and 6th centuries? I don't mind the that's a great topic. I think it would have been a little bit better if it had been, was the Vatican I concept of the papacy manifest in the first millennium? But maybe Ibara said, well, it's got to be more precise than that. So let's we're going to start with Michael Knowles' face. And do we get 50% off of Michael Knowles' sweaters? Because that's the only thing I care about in this Cyber Week sale. Can I get 50% off a Michael Knowles sweater? That's all I care about right now. So let's go to Eric Ybarra right here. And I'm gonna try to withhold from making jokes because everyone says that's uncharitable. Don't make jokes. It's uncharitable. It's uncharitable if you make a joke. DC Woodworking says for $3, silence. Also, I'm a little nervous about playing too much of this because Matt Fradd has not appreciated that I have impersonated his voice. This is how sensitive the people in this whole sphere are, right? Like they can make a million videos about you all day long. If you impersonate them, then you're muted. Because I tried to comment on this debate. No one could see my comments. Because, of course, Matt Fradd has had me muted for many years. That's fine. I don't care what Matt Fradd does. But it's just so, like, this whole sphere of people is just passive aggressive, man. Anyway, let's get to, we're going to do Ibara's opening statement, Ubi's opening statement, and then we're going to go to the highlights. So let's see if we can get through this.
Okay. Thank you, Matt, for hosting this debate. Thank you, Ubi, Denny, for accepting. I should begin by briefly defining Vatican I. Vatican I's doctrine of papal government can be boiled down to three things.
I was hoping that they would do this. Now, I still have not seen the opening statements, so this is the part that I actually missed. So you're going to get my raw, fresh reaction to the opening statements. I watched about the second and thirds of the debate, so I'm trying to catch up to everything in here. And my first concern was, and I know this from so many years of debating Roman Catholics and myself formerly being Roman Catholic and knowing this topic very well, quite often in this unfortunate genre, people don't define what Vatican I actually says. So I'm happy that at least Ibara is going to do that. I don't know if it's going to be correct, but let's see what he says.
Number one, Jesus conferred supreme authority to Peter alone. Number two, the perpetuity of this authority in the Bishop of Rome as the successor of Peter until the end of time. And three, the nature of this authority as including full power to teach infallibly and to possess immediate, direct, and universal jurisdiction over all Christians. My job today is to prove these.
Now, there's already a problem with this definition because although those three broad things are correct, what was not mentioned was the extraordinary magisterium and the universal ordinary magisterium being guided by the charism. And that's really important for this debate because a lot of times, and you're going to notice in this debate that Eric ends up pushing what's called papal minimalism. Tim Gordon is now pushing papal minimalism. All of the modern pop apologists of the papacy have moved into this domain now of pushing what they call papal minimalism, precisely because they have to move in that direction to try to rescue the position because Frank is so bad and such an embarrassment. So they have to try to minimalize the actual authority of the Pope, what he's up to, what he can say, what he can do, what's binding, what isn't, to make the position work. However, when you actually read Vatican I, there is no papal minimalism. It is the ultimate papal maximalist dogmatic council. And that's why every time I bring this up, you hear me arguing and looking for argumentation about ordinary magisterium. Let's find ordinary magisterium. Wherefore, by divine and Catholic faith, all those things that are to be believed, which are contained in the Word of God as found in Scripture and tradition, and which are proposed by the Church as matters to be believed, divinely revealed, whether in solemn judgment or universal ordinary magisterium. So notice that this topic was not mentioned so far in the debate. Maybe it will come up later, right? Maybe not. We'll have to see. But so far, it's just left kind of broad to be that the Pope has this universal authority. But the reason this matters is that in the papal minimalist approach, they're going to try to argue that the only thing that you're really bound by or that we hold Francis accountable to is this minimalist idea or this minimalist thing. The only thing he can pronounce is the occasional sort of ex cathedra type of pronouncement. But that's not the case. In fact, what's binding is the entire domain of Catholic theology that's under universal ordinary magisterium. And they define that as anything that Rome has always taught at all times and in all places. Now, that's a very broad definition, but that's how they define it in terms of the ordinary universal magisterium. That's also binding, and not just the so-called ex cathedra pronouncements. But the reason that matters is that that means you are bound by much more than a minimalist list of ex cathedra documents. By the way, there is no actual list of what's ex cathedra. So in case you thought that the position made it clear, and most Roman Catholics in the pop sphere think that the papal position is minimalist and it makes it clear, it doesn't, because you don't actually ever have a list of the ex cathedra documents. Now, if we were in the Roman Catholic system, wouldn't we expect there to be an infallible list of the infallible documents, or the infallible list of the ex cathedra statements, an ex cathedra statement about what the ex cathedra statements are? Then we would know. But no, actually in the Roman Catholic system, you don't actually have that. You have broad criteria that every individual Catholic has to then interpret this massive amount of documents and history and decrees and so forth. So, note though, this is Vatican I on the screen. And Vatican I does not restrict it to the solemn judgments, namely the ex cathedra. It also says the ordinary magisterium. All of those things are dogma and must be revealed as, or must be believed as, divine revelation. So that's very important because they oftentimes overlook this and blow past it. And just like with natural theology, where Roman Catholics will say, well, we all believe in God, Logos of John 1, that's just like the Logos of, the pagan Greek philosophers. We all believe in Logos. We all believe in God because if you believe in one God, it's all the same God. That is a word concept fallacy that's trading on a lot of ambiguous language. And likewise, in so many papal debates, you have this not clearly defined notion of what papal infallibility actually is versus the assumption that, oh, I just have to prove these sort of generic ideas about the Bishop of Rome in the first millennia or the first few centuries. So in other words, if Rome is mentioned as first, if Rome has a appellate authority in Sardica, et cetera, why couldn't that possibly be Vatican I? And as the debate progresses, what's funny about this, if you watch the whole debate, you probably notice that multiple times Eric actually is kind of arguing and debating what he has to debate. So it's almost like eventually he starts saying, I don't really have to prove or show papal autocracy in the first millennium. I just have to show that there's a possibility that these examples that he gives can be interpreted in that way. Which, the more I think about it, it seems kind of fallacious. And it's more than an argument from silence. I'll read Sneck's. I thought Sneck's comment was pretty accurate, the way he said it. And I think you'll notice this as we progress. Ibarra's position, as Sneck said, is basically unfalsifiable. It says that Vatican I can be proven without ever having to demonstrate it explicitly. Basically, Ibara argues that all evidence and actions that are demonstrable non-X. Wait, let me rephrase that. It basically says that all evidence and actions can be demonstrated to be non-X, non-papal infallibility. But if you find one document that could be interpreted as papal infallibility, then papal infallibility is true. And the more that you watch and listen to this debate and the way that it goes, I think Sneck is correct in that. And maybe we could get Father Deacon Ananias, who's in the chat, maybe FDA could explain. I mean, is it just an argument? It's just such a weird version of, I don't have to look at all the counter examples if I can find one example that possibly proves my case. That's just such a bizarre, weak, weird argument. I don't know what you guys think. I mean, and that's why later on in the debate, Ibara says something like, I don't think I have the burden of proof to show papal infallibility. I just have to show that it's possible. I mean, and that's why Ubi later says, well, Eric, you have a really strong claim about papal infallibility. We should at least be able to see an example of it. And Eric's just like, maybe we don't. Maybe we just have to have kind of a generic possibility that could be interpreted that way, and then my case is proven. Father Deacon, what do you think about this kind of a... What kind of argument is this?
Yeah, what would we call that? I mean, generally, I guess it would be some sort of hasty generalization, but it's weirder than that. It's let's use a counterexample. Okay, so I don't have to consider all the counter objections of pink flying elephants. All I have to do is
show the possibility that there might have been a pink flying elephant, therefore there was.
Yeah.
Or what if an Orthodox person flipped and used that argument? What if an Orthodox person said, I don't have to consider all of the, for the sake of argument, papal positions. If I can show one place where you might read it as the Orthodox position, then Orthodoxy is true. Nobody would accept that.
No. The only time that something like that works is if you say it's logically impossible that such and such. Then I don't actually have to consider, every single example. If I can actually prove something's logically possible, but that's not the same thing.
Right.
It is.
Well, I mean, this is a straight up.
It's not being argued whether there's a logically possible world in which the papacy,
right,
an autocracy could exist in a Vatican I model. Nobody's
exactly right. But I think that if you think about it, then that's exactly what Eric was kind of trying to do, was set up an unfalsifiable model for the papacy, and I think that's what a lot of Roman Catholics end up doing. What do you think?
What was the argument that you just gave too? Yeah.
So basically, it's like, I don't have to worry about all the positions or examples contra my position. All I have to do is give a case where you could possibly read my example as Vatican I.
Yeah, well then, like you said, why not just flip it and say, well, I don't have to consider really any of your arguments,
right,
Eric, because all I have to do is consider a logically possible world or possible reading in which the papacy is false.
Exactly.
So
and this is, I think, why people like Eric does not have any idea about epistemology or logical fallacies at all. And if you've watched enough debates with Eric, go back to our debate, which Ubi later references, like Eric thinks that a debate is basically you just kind of pile on a whole bunch of evidences. And if you stack it up high enough, then it's possible to read your argumentation or your perspective into those examples. But I don't think that works when, if you go back to my debate with Eric, what I was trying to do was do a systemic level argument where I said, Eric, if there's one dogmatic contradiction, then the papal system's not true. It only takes one. But I don't think they think about things in a systemic way. They literally think of everything in this evidentialist, stack it up kind of way. And that's why until they understand paradigm level arguments or tag or any of that kind of stuff, like they're just going to keep floundering and thinking that stacking up a bunch of possible cases that could be read as Vatican I and just hand waving all the counter examples is enough to make the Vatican I position possible. And you'll notice too that Eric has way walked back all the stuff he was arguing in 2018, 2019. If you remember back to that time, Eric was arguing, as Ubi pointed out at that time, that Pope Leo's tome is ex cathedra. Eric doesn't argue that anymore. He's walked all that back and conveniently doesn't talk about the fact that he's walked all that back. Go ahead.
I will have to give credit to Eric, though. I think he's found his kind of niche, and knowing his audience and what people respond to. And as far as trying to persuade people, most people don't understand epistemology, logic, and fallacies and stuff like that, and it just goes over people's head when we go over that. And so what Eric's found works is to do exactly what he did.
Exactly.
It confuses people, but not confusing the people in the sense that like going over basic, kind of paradigmatic epistemological questions and stuff would confuse people. It confuses people that they don't see what the logic behind his arguments. Not
that it's terrible. Yeah, it's a terrible line of argumentation. And
but
again,
he throws enough history and enough quotes in there, and I actually have to say it works. Like, it looks on the surface really good. Like, this guy's outdoing all the Orthodox on this or something like that, because you just stack up enough, quotes and stuff like that. And so I think he's picked up on that. He knows what works. And
the quote mine model will never cease to be effective in duping mid to low tier observers, for sure. All right, let's get to a little more. Let's get to Eric's opening statements, or we'll never get through this.
3 things from mutually acceptable sources of Christian history. I'll be restricting myself to 3 things: the ecumenical councils, the church fathers, venerated by East and West, and the expertise of scholarship, particularly Eastern Orthodox Byzantinists. My opponent, Ubi Petrus, takes the position that the Bishop of Rome indeed had a universal primacy of real power and jurisdiction, but one that is mediated and granted to him by canonical law. When and if a pope appeared to be exercising legitimate authority in the first millennium, Ubi takes it as merely the prerogative that constitutional law gives to the heads of a council. However, while it is true that popes often acted as heads of councils, I argue this is a reductionism. This will be the crux of our debate. Before diving into the historical sources, let me ask this: what should we be looking for in history? Some think if the papacy is true, history would be filled with examples of absolute and unstoppable papal individualism. That is, the Pope doing everything himself over and against everybody else. However, Pius IX himself, the Pope who presided over the First Vatican Council, did not believe that this was the logical result. In June of 1871, the year after Vatican I, Pius IX accepted the famous instruction of the Swiss bishops.
Now, I want to make one comment here, which is that for rhetorical purposes, this sounds plausible. I understand where Eric's going, and he's already kind of setting it up to where he's saying, look, maybe we don't have to have a lot of examples of this in history, and it can still be true. But let's think about the logic of this. According to the argumentation of Vatican I, the way that it presents its approach to ecclesiology, and the way that almost all the Roman Catholic apologists present their argumentation, their case, is that this is so necessary to the governance of the church that without this method or model or office being exercised, the church cannot maintain its fundamental unity. So remember that. Because if that's the case, and it was not exercised clearly or done or utilized, even though the Pope perhaps had this power in the first millennium, then it's still a gigantic failure to not exercise and use the power that is argued by Vatican I to be the very thing that guides and ensures the unity and preservation of the church. So it's already a silly argument to say that just because it's not used doesn't mean it's not there. Well, if it wasn't used and it was there, then it failed to do the thing that Vatican I says it's created and there to do. So even that is stupid. And by the way, we would expect that the church, for example, when it defines itself at Constantinople I, that it would include some notion of the governance and model of the church when it defined the church. But what does the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed say? It says one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Nothing about Peter, nothing about Rome. Why, if Vatican I is true from all times of the earliest days and all places, would there not be a mention of Rome and its place in the creed that the entire church is using for hundreds of years or a millennia? Well, it was a seed form that grew into the tree, but it was always there. I mean, it's just like they go back and forth, back. And remember, that's moving the goalposts. And remember that Vatican I, Pastor Eternus, and Satis Cognitum of Leo XIII both say that the understanding of Vatican I, because those are relative, those documents and those statements are Vatican I and relative to Vatican I, that it was always understood from the earliest days of the church that this was the governance model of the church. Yet, when challenged, as we've repeated this a million times, when Roman Catholic pop apologists especially are challenged on this point, their retort is always, well, it was a seed form that grew into what we have today. It cannot be both. That is a mutually exclusive claim. It can't be the case that it was always universally there and understood from the very beginning, and it wasn't always there and clearly understood and utilized, and it grew from a seed to a tree. Those are mutually exclusive claims, Roman Catholics. So which one is it? And don't flip-flop back and forth and move the goalposts between the two different positions and claims. Yet, after however many years, I've been interacting with Roman Catholic apologetics since 2002. So 22 years of watching and looking at this domain, almost 23. And I've seen this flip-flop back and forth so often that it just really gets old. I'm tired of this flip-flopping back. Which one is it? Was it always there in a seed form? What does that even mean? It was always there. He could have had it, but he just didn't do it. Well, then the papacy is a massive failure. It didn't do the thing it was supposed to do.
Which made it clear that the Pope, both before and after Vatican I, is morally bound to work together with his brother bishops in the government of the church. When he was head of the CDF, Father Joseph Ratzinger said that the papacy and the episcopate is, quote, reciprocally related and inseparable, close quote. If that is true, that should influence our expectations as to what we should find in history. We should...
Now, this is the move, this is him setting up for papal minimalism. And the reason he can argue for papal minimalism is because Vatican II's ecclesiology imported synodality and tried to so-called balance out the claims of Vatican I. And so, as Ubi will later mention, there is a kind of dual ecclesiology going on in the Roman Catholic model, but that itself is a demonstration that we don't need this, and this is not the ancient model of the church. there's not competing ecclesiologies in the church, especially if you believe in the divine governance of the church. Did Jesus establish an ambiguous, unclear model of ecclesiology to where, well, maybe in the first 1,000 years it's a synodality and everybody's working together in collegiality, or maybe it's the papacy working together with collegiality? So Eric's just setting up a papal minimalist position, which is trying to give place to and trying to incorporate this synodal model, which, by the way, Tim Gordon has been bitching about for an entire year plus, because he says this is the Vatican now conceding and giving up the papacy because it's going to mean ultimately that women can be priests and women can be deacons and women perhaps should be included in the governance of the church, right? That's all Tim Gordon has fussed about for a year or two now, right? Because that's where the Vatican II real Novus Ordo ecclesiology is actually going. Tim's correct about that. But synodality is a concession, not just at Vatican II, but more recently in the Alexandria document, which admits everything that we've been, 90% of what Orthodox have been complaining about for 1,000 years. I don't know. I can't remember if they bring up Chiedi in Alexandria or not. But the point is just that this is not actually a win for the Catholic position to say that, okay, maybe Vatican I was ultramontanist, so we're going to balance it out with collegiality and synodality. Because wait a minute, according to Tim Gordon and everything he's talking about with these Novus Ordo goblins, like collegiality and synodality for the Roman Catholic system means women being brought in, Skittles stuff, all of this. Now, maybe Eric thinks that that's not true, but I mean, who would really believe that? That the Skittles stuff and the women priests and deacons, as if that's not coming, right? I mean, and Tim Gordon's correct about that. But Tim Gordon is not correct about the fact that synodality and collegiality is this huge liberal innovation. Liberals are using that in the Novus Ordo sphere to bring women and Skittles in, but synodality and collegiality is the governance model of the church in the first millennium. And that's what Chiedi and Alexandria admit. And Ybarra is trying to position himself as this, enlightened centrist kind of, well, look, we got a kind of an ecclesiology over here of Pope. We got a kind of an ecclesiology over here of synodality. And look, already the Pope said he acknowledges the fact that there's a college of bishops. Well, giving me quotes and quote mines that the Pope in Vatican I recognize a college of bishop has nothing to do with actually proving that the position is correct. That just shows me perhaps that it's contradictory. But you'll notice after a million debates of Roman Catholics, they do this all the time where if you call out an error, let's say in Thomism, they'll go and find the quote where Thomas says this. Yeah, but that doesn't tell me that Aquinas is actually correct. That just shows me that perhaps he's contradicting, you see.
Not expect to see papal individualism in the texts of history, but rather a normal conjoining of Pope and his brother bishops, head and members, with the added detail that the Pope's authority rests upon foundations that clearly display that he was given unique and singular privileges to govern by divine right from Christ through succession from the Apostle Peter. Therefore, simply demonstrating the conciliar or synodal procedure of the church in the first millennium will not suffice to subtract from my thesis. Now let's dive into the history.
But Eric, if the church's praxis are actually against the papacy, then it would subtract from the thesis. So he's already set it up to where just because there's collegiality or synodality doesn't necessarily contradict the papacy. Yeah, but nobody was making the argument that all I have to show is that there's synods and councils and that disproves the papacy. Well, what if we show that synods and councils reject and depose and excommunicate popes, as will actually be shown in the debate, and will actually silence Ibara at one point?
I'll be looking at four things. Number one, the Council of Chalcedon. Number two, the formula of Hormisdas. And number three, the three chapters controversy. And four, a note on the schism between Pope Symmachus and anti-Pope Laurentius. In the events leading up to Chalcedon, we see a Greek archimandrite, Eutyches, and his synodal accusers appealing to Rome for a verdict on apostolic Christology, to which Pope Leo the Great issued his famous tome defining the two natures of Christ. With terminology of papal supremacy, Leo claimed that because Christ made the Apostle Peter to share in his own authority to govern the universal church, the person of Peter's successor inherits immediately divine authorization to bindingly teach the universal church. Leo claimed that his tome was the final word that could not be revised and would serve as the sole condition for saving communion. Long before he obtained the agreement of the whole church at Chalcedon, he wrote, quote, "Whoever departs from Peter's confession, that is the judgment of Peter's successor, has no part in the mystical building that is the Church of Christ," close quote. Vasily Bolotov, a 19th century Russian Orthodox scholar and a great church historian, according to Father Georgios Florovsky, states that in Leo, quote, "all the Roman prerogatives of supremacy are to be found exactly as they have been defined by the Council of the Vatican," close quote.
Now, this is interesting because this model of Eric pulling from a bunch of Russian Orthodox and Orthodox historians and what do you call them, Byzantinists, is probably an effective strategy for debate. But the problem is that Eric is kind of leaving out the fact that all of these people that he's quoting don't believe the Roman Catholic position. So in other words, yeah, you could find people that concede, let's say, Pope Leo, or even later Pope St. Gregory the Great. Perhaps they had an expanded idea of what their jurisdiction and their abilities were, but that doesn't mean that it's correct. And this was the thing that Eric did in my debate with him. If you remember, he would say, "What about Pope so and so over here? He seemed to think he had this power." Well, in an Orthodox paradigm, I could just simply say he got something wrong. He wasn't correct. The fact that he did that doesn't mean that it was therefore acceptable, correct, and true. So it's almost like in the Roman Catholic position, they will argue that if a pope, and by the way, we argue and we think that this evolved and grew over time, right? The papal prerogatives, by the time of the 11th century with Gregory the Great, the Gregorian reforms, it gets totally outlandish into full-on Quisatz Haderach God Emperor land. And we've shown that many times with Unum Sanctum and with Dictatus Papae. Unum Sanctum is 1382, but Dictatus Papae is 11th century. And that's where the Pope doesn't just say that he has all of these spiritual prerogatives of universality and you have to be in communion with him to be saved. He actually says you have to believe in the temporal supremacy, that the Pope is a world emperor to be saved. Okay, and I don't know why Roman Catholics can't understand this argument. I've made it abundantly clear countless times. Every time I say this, they think I'm saying, Unum Sanctum said you got to be in communion with the Pope to be saved, but Vatican II qualified that. That's not the argument. The argument is that Unum Sanctum also says to be saved, you must believe in the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop. Maybe they don't know what that is because Vatican II Roman Catholicism no longer holds to that. But in the Middle Ages, the Pope was an emperor. Literally, a world emperor. And his prerogatives were such, as Dictatus Papae lays out. This became very controversial with many state rulers in Europe. Many of them didn't like this. Some of them went to war with the papacy. If you go watch the Borgia's TV show with Jeremy Irons, where he's playing Alexander VI, it's actually correct. Where at one point he says, I have standing armies. If you do not fight for me, I excommunicate you. That is nowhere in the first 1,000 years of the church. Obviously, anyone with any ounce of intellectual honesty can realize. As I argued recently, I think you guys saw this debate that I had with the friendly civil Roman Catholic guy the other day. I forget his name, but I've made multiple videos on this now. Remember this guy? What was his name? Where is it at? Chris Plants. Okay, we had this friendly hour, 15-minute discussion over this topic. And, not to be mean to Chris, but it's almost like it took Chris an hour to understand what I was arguing. I'm not talking about Unum Sanctum's claim that you have to be in communion with Rome to be saved. I'm talking about the claim that you have to believe in the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop to be saved. A view which is no longer taught post-Vatican II. There is no Roman Catholic I've ever heard, except for weird trad cats who are like 0.01%, who actually still say that you have to believe in the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop to be saved. Okay, obviously the teachings about freedom of conscience and freedom of worship and religious liberty in Vatican II discard this idea of the Middle Ages. Obviously. And only the weirdest, dishonest creeps on the internet would try to maintain, no, actually the Vatican still does teach that you have to believe in temporal supremacy, even though they've taken off their Triple Crown hat. So the Pope doesn't wear his Triple Crown hat anymore, which signifies this power. They gave it to the UN or whatever. But you've still got Roman Catholics trying to argue this position. Anyway, how did I get off on this? I'm way off course here, but the point is that, like, Eric is acting like this isn't true. I actually think this kind of stuff is way more devastating to the papacy than these quote mines of trying to find, like, really obscure references to where a pope says he has all this authority. Okay, good. So what? In the Orthodox position, by the way, and the Roman Catholic position, you don't believe everything the Pope says. Even the Roman Catholics don't believe everything the popes say and teach. So the fact that he finds a quote here or there where there's an evolving, expansive claim of the Roman bishop to have more and more power, which culminates in the 11th century with the Gregorian reforms of the Pope being a world emperor, doesn't prove anything unless you presuppose the papal position to begin with, Eric. That's what's so frustrating about Eric. And if you go back and watch my debate with Eric from 2018, he never understood a paradigm level, system level critique. And still doesn't. And one of my commenters in the community tab, let me see if I can find it. Long time, excellent commenter, TL Chakoti or whatever his name is. He had a great comment. I think he laid it out perfectly. Let me read what he said. He said, he always has some of the best takes. Maybe it's on this other. It's on the debate itself. He says, oh, now I can't find it. He basically said, we're 7 years into this, and Eric has still never understood a paradigm level critique. But, I haven't listened to the debate I did with Eric in a long time, and I seem to remember him even saying at one point in the debate, yes, Jay, I do concede that if you could demonstrate a dogmatic contradiction, it would negate the papal position. I think he said, I'm going from memory, maybe he didn't say that, but I seem to remember him saying something like that in our debate. And if that's the case, then that's precisely why I would argue the paradigm level dogmatic contradiction position. And if you want one of the clearest, easiest examples, it is this argument that the papacy used to claim that to be saved, you have to believe in its temporal supremacy, meaning that you have to accept its world emperor status. That's what that means, for those that don't know what the word temporal means. That just means that authority in the physical. No, it means in the state realm. And the canons of Chalcedon, as I brought up to Chris Plants in our debate, explicitly forbid all clerics from civil state positions. So how is the Pope going to be a world emperor and have armies? If you want to cite Chalcedon. Oh, well, the Pope's not bound by the canons of the councils. Well, then how was he excommunicated by the Sixth Council? By the way, that will be one of the key places where Ibara falters hard in two places. And we're going to see those. And imagine if Ubi, I don't think Ubi faltered. He was a little unaggressive in the first half. The second half, he got more aggressive. But imagine if an Orthodox apologist or debater had said, I just don't know the answer to that, and I ain't got no sufficient explanation yet. The Roman Catholic world would be denounced. Well, they'd be going crazy, announcing the end of orthodoxy is here. The Roman Catholic the Orthodox apologists have completely capitulated. And yet Ibara can say this like multiple times. I don't know. I guess I just did. And they're just like, oh yeah, but he gets a pass, right?
Another 20th century Russian Orthodox academic, Archbishop Fyodor Podziewski.
All right, folks, it is time for our absolute biggest deal of the year on Daily Wire Plus. That is 50%.
Who contributed notable works on the church fathers to the mosque.
So now he's citing like random Russian historians. I've read a lot of Orthodox theology. I've never even heard of this guy. Not that he's not a record. It's just funny that like Eric's going to these really obscure figures. Perhaps this random Russian Orthodox historian is like a super ecumenist. I don't know. We don't know, right? Because he's pulling from kind of random Orthodox historians. I mean, okay, well, who is this person and what's his position?
Theological Academy said that the ecclesiology of Vatican I can be, quote, deduced from Leo's system by purely logical means, close quote. He also...
But again, unless this Russian Orthodox historian is super ecumenist, Eric, the fact that they're saying that people can deduce and derive this does not make it true. And they also, as Orthodox, presumably don't believe in the positions that are being outlined supposedly from Leo. Now, again, keep in mind that Eric has tried to prop up this Leo argument since 2018, which eventually he ended up walking back. I don't have Eric's book, so I don't know if he's still using this argument or what. But in 2018-19, he tried to argue that the Tome of Leo was proof that the popes of this time were utilizing ex cathedra. It sounds like he's still trying to utilize this argument. So I'm going to give you Ubi's response to this argument that the Tome of Leo was supposedly ex cathedra. And also Ubi has a video, because I know everybody in the chat is pretty lazy. They're probably not going to read. And this is the video that was made for Ubi's channel in response to this pretty recently. I think this is the full video that's been released. So here is the full response of Ubi, because I don't know in Ubi's opening statement yet whether he will actually get to all of this. But it's sort of like, is this really where Eric's going? Like the arguments that he walked away from and tried to walk back, and now he's going to try to prop that up? Maybe, let's see.
Stated that juridical immunity and papal infallibility, while logically deducible in Leo, was manifest in his successors, Pope Gelasius, Hormisdas, and Agatho the Great, each venerated by the Orthodox Church. The late Olivier Clement, who was professor of church history at the St. Sergius Orthodox Theological Institute, wrote that Leo's tome, In the Thought of Leo, quote, was itself decisive and that the council simply must ratify it, close quote. Clement sees Leo simply echoing his predecessor, Pope Celestine, who reminded the Ecumenical Council of Ephesus that, quote, Christ established Peter as the foundation of the church, close quote, and that, quote, Peter continued to be present in his successors, close quote. The papal legates at that council said Peter, quote, forever both lives and judges in his successors, close quote.
Just another thing I'd like to add again here is that, this sounds like, okay, well, wait a minute. So if there was an evolving, expansive idea of the prerogatives of the Roman See and the Bishop of Rome that, in our view, took many centuries, and yeah, you probably had this growing consensus or this growing idea in the Roman See about what they could do and what they had, which, by the way, gets propped up by forgeries pretty quickly after this time period. This still doesn't mean that it's so. And let me give you another example of this. In, say, the first 6 centuries, 7 centuries of the church, there are all manner of different lists of the Bible canon. There are differing lists amongst Eastern Fathers versus Latin Fathers. There are differing lists of the New Testament books. There's differing lists of the Old Testament books. All the way up to John of Damascus, St. John of Damascus, who actually thought that Clement was part of the canon. So the fact that you find historical examples does not mean that it's true. And in fact, even late in the game, many church fathers and saints were wrong about the canon of Scripture. And so if they can be wrong about that, And even the Roman Catholic position admits that you don't follow one saint or even one pope per se. Maybe you do. But even if Gregory the Great at one point says, for example, that, let's say for the sake of argument, that he believes that he has authority beyond what perhaps his predecessors thought Rome had. Does that mean that it's true? All it means is that there was an evolving self-consciousness about what Rome thought they could do. It doesn't therefore mean that it's true. And it also doesn't demonstrate the autocracy position, which Ubi will later ask Eric to give an example of. And that's why the Leo tome example becomes such a hot, contentious topic. But again, if the Roman See itself is excommunicated and taken out by an ecumenical council, which Eric will admit, that's a defeater for the position that Rome always had this power and it was the universal consciousness of the church. And so Eric again thinks and has had to reframe the debate to where he doesn't have to deal with counterexamples. He only has to give this or that example of prerogatives that are growing. But prerogatives that are growing doesn't necessarily get you Vatican I. And the fact that an Orthodox historian or a Russian historian says, okay, you could deduce this from Leo, does not equate to Leo taught this or had this. It's a logical deduction from Leo. But you notice when Eric read the quote, he gave the impression that the Orthodox are basically saying that Leo thought that he had Vatican I powers. No. Vatican I could be deduced from that. But I guarantee you, and I'm not positive, but I don't know these obscure people he's referencing, I guarantee you that they don't believe the Vatican I position. Unless they're radical ecumenists and they want some kind of reunion, which is possible. But if they're Orthodox, they probably don't believe that. So Eric's stacking again with quote mines from people who don't believe Vatican I.
Quote, that claim was accepted by St. Cyril of Alexandria, the entire council, and should be accepted by both Catholics and Orthodox. Dr. George Demokopoulos, a Greek Orthodox scholar.
By the way, this is all, again, still ambiguous because that Peter judges in his successors, or that Peter continues to work through the See of Rome, none of that equates to the outlandish claims of Vatican I about infallibility and that it's this ex cathedra power. So again, the quotes from the Orthodox people that are conceding that you might find a basis for later deductions does not mean that therefore the mind of the church at Chalcedon was that Leo was ex cathedra, teaching ex cathedra. You see how it's like, it's a bunch of non sequiturs that Eric is trying to construct a story or a narrative to prove.
Of the Patristic said that Leo held his tome to be the, quote, measuring stick of orthodoxy, close quote. Chalcedon can measure up or do nothing at all. Father Richard Price, the renowned patristic scholar, states that Pope Leo understood his tome to be, quote, totally authoritative. He did not believe his teaching gained any authority by being approved by an ecumenical council, close quote.
But wait a minute. It's a double-edged sword when these people quote Father Richard Price, because we all remember the excellent clippable moment when Reason and Theology interviewed Father Richard Price on this very topic. And what did Father Richard Price say about the papacy at this time? So remember, because Eric's not going to tell you this, who knows if they even kept this interview up. They probably took it down. But thank God somebody clipped it. Let's listen to Father Richard Price himself on their show talking to them about how the church viewed the papacy at this time.
Why did the bishops in Chalcedon feel they needed to judge Theodoret if Leo had already reinstated him?
Well, they didn't recognize Roman jurisdiction in the eastern provinces. So Leo's reinstating for them was not decisive. A decision has to be made in the east. um, Theodoret's position at the council is a very interesting one. When the
Why did the bishops in
One more time.
Chalcedon feel they needed to judge Theodoret if Leo had already reinstated him?
Well, they didn't recognize Roman jurisdiction in the eastern provinces. So
now, do you understand? That's the guy Ibara is quoting, who literally contradicts what Eric is saying about what the bishops at Chalcedon understood about the Roman bishop.
Not least expressing his supremacy in doctrine, Leo overturned the sentences against Eastern bishops who were condemned at the robber synod of Ephesus in 449. This is followed up by the Council of Chalcedon, wherein the tome of Leo was widely received by the right-believing bishops of both East and West as the authoritative voice of Peter. This council, from the very first session, accepted the tome as part and parcel of the Church's dogmatic confessions of faith. Not everyone held that view, however. Unfortunately, resistance to the tome and the papacy increased, and new emperors devised an alternative plan to secure peace in the empire. The first strategy was to throw Leo's tome and Chalcedon to the periphery with the imperial edict known as the Henoticon. Chalcedon became either a good option or an obstacle. This was supported by Emperor Zeno and Acacius, the Patriarch of Constantinople. Pope St. Felix III, on the basis of his apostolic auctoritas, issued a universal excommunication of Acacius and all who held communion with him. This started the Acacian Schism in 484 AD. This demonstrates a claim of immediate jurisdiction, since it was a judgment decided by the Pope and resting upon his singular apostolic authority in St. Peter. Pope St. Gelasius defended the singular right of the Roman pontiff to issue such a condemnation on the grounds of his immediate commission from Christ through Peter. The world-renowned Greek Byzantinist Milton Anastas sums up the Roman view.
The Byzantinist is summing up the Roman view?
In the thought of Pope.
Okay, I'm going to have to put this slow motion man on, like, this is just taking forever. Let's put him on double speed because he talks in freaking slow motion. Let's see. Let's put him at 0.75. Would that make him normal speed?
Pope St. Gelasius, quote, believing...
Oh, no, wait. I meant to do 1.75. I will be here until freaking Christmas if I do that with him talking. Let's go to 1.75.
That Christ had delegated to the See of Rome supreme authority over the whole church, with power to govern in all questions concerning doctrine and discipline, Gelasius held, says Anastas, the Pope on his own initiative could make decisions binding upon the entire church without recourse to a council, for in his judgment the See of Rome constituted the highest tribunal in the Christian church, its decisions were irreversible, and itself could not be judged by anyone, close quote. Milton Anastas received his...
Yeah, but the idea that the first see can be judged by no one ends up being a forgery, which is still cited in, it's a Sammachian forgery, and it's still cited in Roman Catholic canon law. So they're still citing known forgeries, by the way, just keep that in mind.
PhD in history from Harvard University, and was a prestigious professor of classics and Byzantine history. While many Greeks in the East were questioning Chalcedon at this time, Rome held firm to its classical narrative. Pope St. Simplicius, venerated by the...
By the way, this is an interesting strategy because everybody realizes that we could go and find many Roman Catholic theologians and historians that disagree with Catholic dogma, couldn't we? Couldn't we? We could pile up James Martin's quotes. We could pile up Hans Kung quotes. We could pile up Skillebeck's quotes. And all of those quotes would give the impression that Roman Catholic theologians universally recognize Orthodox arguments. That's the flimsiness of this approach of Eric. He's literally just stacking a bunch of quotes of Orthodox historians, renowned Byzantinists, admitting this or that supposed Catholic argument. Which, again, admitting that argument doesn't mean that they're admitting the Catholic positions. They're just saying that you could perhaps find the seeds or the traces of the papacy in Leo. But remember, satis cognitum And Pastor Eternus of Vatican I do not argue that you can find the seeds of it or the logic of it is deducible from Leo. They argue that from the earliest days prior to Leo, all of these Vatican I prerogatives were there and known by the church. So Eric, again, is moving it to papal minimalism away from what Satis Cognitum and Pastor Eternus actually say. And that's the necessary strategy of what Rome has to do, these pop apologists have to do.
Orthodox wrote to the Emperor Zeno.
By the way, have you noticed? No one of their whole school or their ilk, none of them, not one of them except Chris Plants, and I'll give Chris Plants, who has a very small channel, I'll give him credit. He at least tried to address my dogmatic contradiction argument from the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop and then the post-Vatican II teaching. Does everybody remember that when I tried to debate with Ibara, he would not debate me on pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II teaching? Does everybody remember that? We can do that some other time, Jay. Right now, I'm going to stack up papacy arguments for the next 17 hours. No, he would not debate that. And he will never debate it. When I originally wanted to debate Eric years ago, before I went on their stream, I wanted to debate that topic, pre and post Vatican II contradictions. The only thing Eric will debate is these hyper-precise quote mine areas of 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th century. Because it's very effective, as Father Deegan and I pointed out, at duping people into thinking that, oh, well, look, here's a bunch of quotes. Look at all these historians. I guess the Roman Catholic position is true. But wait a minute. Are you sure you want to go this route? Do you know what you're buying into? I made these mistakes. I bought into quote mines. I bought into forged quotes in my 20s. And in about 5 to 10 years, you realize, as many of the Roman Catholics are starting to realize, like Chris Plants, it turns out you got to also defend all these other things like unum sanctum. It's kind of like a cult where you realize, oh, wait a minute, I actually have to defend, I have to defend the Thetans and, all the Scientology. It's like, would you learn the inner secrets like Scientology or Mormons? Oh, we just believe in Jesus. And then like 5 years later, I'm defending celestial space sex and space babies. That's the real inner Mormon teachings, right? Well, guess what? You don't get this minimalist position of Roman Catholicism, if you're going to be honest with history, when unum sanctum dogmatizes the temporal supremacy of the Roman. You also got to defend that. Make sense of that. That's why these people become papal lawyers. Why do I keep wiping my nose? Because I have allergies. Or you can choose to believe that I'm just sitting here snorting coke all day. Whatever you want to believe, go ahead. Clip it and expose me, bro. Exposed.
Pure Christian faith, permanent.
I finally got proof that Jay's a bad person. He admitted on his stream that he's doing piles of cocaine like Tony Montana.
Persat in the Latin, remains, quote, in the successors of Peter, upon whom the Lord imposed the care of the whole sheepfold, whom he promised he would not fail even to the end of the world, close quote. To heal the Eastern Schism, a new pope, Hormisdas, drew up a formula, or like Belus. The terms were, among other things, irrevocable assent to Leo's tome and the removal of certain names from liturgical command.
I would like to add, too, that everyone, I'm sure most of the audience is aware that Eric Ybarra has himself, since 2018, walked back many of his views on Francis. And Eric has admitted many of the disastrous policies and actions and teachings of Francis. So keep in mind, Eric is somebody who is claiming all this stuff about history, but himself thinks Francis has made terrible, horrible mistakes. I don't know if he thinks he's a heretic or whatever, but Eric's whole model has been in the last few years to make concessions. There's all these concessions, right? We got to concede to the Orthodox this and that and this and that. Well, that's all his methodology. And it's his own Vatican that has made the concessions. Like at the Alexandria document, where you have the admissions of most of the Orthodox arguments, or at the Chieti document. What is the Chieti document? Which, by the way, trumps the authority of Eric Ibara in the Roman Catholic world, because these are papally approved documents. What does Chieti say? The very thing I argued to Ibara in our debate. Remember when I made these points in the debate with Ibara and he dissed them like is not true? When I said, well, Sardica was not the only model of appellate jurisdiction. You could appeal to other patriarchates. That's not true, Jay. That ain't the. No, look, what does it say? Sardica was received at Trullo. The canons of Sardica determined that a bishop who had been condemned could appeal to the Bishop of Rome, And that the Bishop of Rome, if he deemed it appropriate, could order what? A retrial, not an ex cathedra statement, to be conducted by bishops in the province. Appeals regarding these matters were also made to Constantinople. The very thing I said in the Ibara debate, that all the Roman Catholics, Dyer's making it up. Dyer's making up crap. Dude, the stuff I said is in your own freaking documents. Roman Catholics literally act like Muslims in debates, and in the especially in the chats. So there's no distinguishing Muslim chatters and Roman Catholic chatters in debates. Such appeals to these major sees were always treated in a what? Autocratic papal way? No, in a synodal way. So, guys, look, you don't have to get PhDs in history. The Roman Vatican frickin' websites are admitting the points. And you got this gigantic goober trying to prop up this system which has admitted everything that we've been talking about. So just keep in mind the basics. Don't get lost in the smoke in the mirrors of the thousands of quotes. The basics are that Chieti says that there was no, what does it say? The Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. Can you read this? Do you want me to read it to you again? The Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. The Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. The Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. Roman Catholics, hard-headed goobers, can you understand? Do you see what that says? Your own documents, goofballs. The Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. Do you need to hear it again? All you hard-headed goobers. Eric, take the Cinnabon out of your ears. The Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the Church of the East. What did Richard Price say in their interview on their channel? They did not think that Leo had universal jurisdiction. But that don't count, because that's a document that is not infallible. It don't count.
Especially Acacius. More importantly, in this formula, he echoes his predecessor, Simplicius. It was professed in the formula that the Christian religion always remains pure in Rome because of a permanent promise made by Christ to build his church upon Peter. Consequently, unity with the Roman See was indistinguishable.
By the way, ask any of them when are they going to deal with the temporal supremacy argument. None of them have dealt with it. None of them. Except Chris Plants. Props to him. If you want the basic argument, here is the video I made. This one dogmatic contradiction ends Roman Catholicism. Here you go. Right here. You want one easy dogmatic... There's many, by the way. This is just one easy one. Here's one. You used to have to believe that the Pope was a world emperor to be saved. And you had to accept that. Now you don't. Therefore, Roman Catholic dogma contradicts and changes. Do you want... Is that not easy enough for you? Is that not clear enough? Remember, Ibara said that it could be one contradiction that shows. If I recall, he conceded that.
Community with the church. Commenting on the Petrine contents of the formula, the Orthodox theologian Father Alexander Schmemann said, quote, "The whole essence of the papal claims cannot be more clearly expressed than in this libellous document, which was imposed upon the Eastern bishops," close quote. In Oxford Press' most recent monograph on Byzantine history by Greek historian and classics professor Anthony Kaldelis, he states the following, quote, "For the East to return to communion with Rome, all its bishops must submit to the Pope," close quote, speaking about the formula of Hormisdas. Kaldelis calls the formula a binding document that affirms, quote, "Rome's supremacy over the church," close quote, requiring, quote, "obedience to the supreme pontiff and the universal Pope," close quote.
This is interesting because this is literally all of the stuff that Ubi and Ybarra have been debating for many years now. So it's odd to me that Eric just went with this, but I guess what else are you going to do, right? I mean, really to try to demonstrate the papacy, you've really only got these examples that Eric's using here, right? That's really your best case. But it's odd because they've been going back and forth about these very things for years. But I guess, again, perhaps Ibara is just resting on people not going and checking this. But here is Ubi's article from 2022 about the formula of Hormisdas, if you want to watch this. But I'm sure Ubi's going to mention this when he gets to his... I don't know. He may not. I don't know what... Because you never know exactly what your opponent's going to mention in their opening statement. But Ubi probably thought he would bring these up.
Another Greek Orthodox Byzantinist, Peter Charonis, says, quote, acceptance of this formula meant, of course, absolute submission to the Pope, close quote. Dr. Joseph P. Farrell, author of the multi-volume God, History, and Dialectic, writes that the formula of Hormisdas, quote, demanded the complete submission of the Eastern Church to the papacy, close quote. Volker Menz, a medievalist and perhaps the foremost Chalcedonian.
Doesn't everybody recognize that this was already going on with Pope Victor? I mean, Pope Victor threatened to excommunicate the entire East over the Quartodeciminarian controversy. And nobody believes that, quote, Pope Victor's argument or claim is true because he said it. In fact, St. Irenaeus rebuked Pope Victor, the very guy that Roman Catholics quote mine to try to say that he believed in the Vatican I papal supremacy view, because Irenaeus in Against Heresies uses Rome as an example of apostolic succession. They leave out the fact that Irenaeus rebukes Pope Victor over this idea that he could excommunicate all of the East. So again, the fact that people do these things does not prove that they're correct, you see.
And scholar today writes, quote, the libellus begins with Matthew 16. And I tell you, you are Peter, on this rock I will build my church. In other words, since Rome was regarded as the see of Peter, on Rome the church was built. Based on this ideological foundation, the libellus claims not only the papacy to be...
But remember, Rome is not just the see of Peter. In fact, in Irenaeus himself, the greatness of Rome is that it's doubly apostolic. It's the see of Peter and Paul. Likewise, there are 3 Petrine sees as late as Gregory the Great. Gregory the Great admits in his letters that the Petrine see is Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch. Those 3 sees are the Petrine sees. So all this proves is an evolving idea of Roman prerogatives. It does not prove that Vatican I is true or was always true in the church. It just proves that Rome gave themselves more and more and more prerogatives, which is precisely the Orthodox position.
In the apostolic succession since the time of the apostles, but also to be instituted by Christ himself according to the New Testament, close quote.
And by the way,
the season of giving is...
if you doubt that that's correct, that Rome gave itself more and more and more prerogatives, that's why I keep bringing up the temporal supremacy argument. Because everybody recognizes that this comes to a head in the 11th century. Even the most famous Roman Catholic scholars and historians admit this. So I can play this game too. Dvornik, Congar, Szyszynski, who used to be Uniate and became Orthodox, they all admit that the 11th century Gregorian reforms take the papacy to new, unparalleled, literal Kwisatz Haderach heights, God Emperor status. What does that prove? Why do I keep bringing that up? Because it proves the point that we make, that it's an evolving thing of greater and greater prerogatives and power claims over many centuries, propped up again by forgeries, admitted by these people. That proves the evolving claim, you see. And again, remember, these people no longer believe that you have to accept the temporal supremacy position to be saved. In other words, they themselves concede and admit it's an evolving prerogatives claim. And if that's admitted, and if that's the case, then everything that Ibara's arguing here falls apart. It doesn't prove anything.
Men's claims that
it just proves what we already all know, that it evolved.
The formula of Hormisdas, quote, required every bishop to accept the papal view on the Christian church, past and faith, close quote. Dr. Claire Sontenal, the renowned patristic scholar, writes the following for the Cambridge Companion to the Age of Justinian, quote, for the Pope, the union meant that the new emperor fully accepted Roman authority in all ecclesiastical matters, disciplinary as well as doctrinal, close quote. In his Princeton monograph on Western authority, the Anglican priest scholar Carl F. Morrison states that the formula equated Roman communion and communion with Christ as, quote, identical, close quote. And that's precisely the case.
Again, I don't know why he's stacking this with Anglican quotes now. Like anybody gives a crap about what an Anglican historian says about the Romans. Like, I mean, he's probably quoting some ecumenist who wants to go back to Rome. So, It's a very subtle, kind of slimy tactic, by the way.
Hormisdas was not merely speaking to the past, but also to the future, requiring all the subscribers to avoid the communion of anybody who would deviate from Rome, even in the future. And yet it was accepted by all Easterners who came into unity with Rome. Pope Hormisdas' son, who later became Pope St. Silverius, wrote this in the epitaph for his father. Quote, Greece defeated...
So, like half the people don't know what I'm talking about. The Quixotes Haderach is from Dune. It's the universe's super being. It's the prophecy about when the super being comes, he will be the God Emperor. Now, everybody thinks it's Paul Atreides. It doesn't end up being Paul Atreides. It ends up being his worm son or grandson or whatever. But Quixotes Haderach is a Dune reference. Dune. It's a joke from Dune, and I always use that to illustrate the outlandish medieval claims of the papacy after the Gregorian reforms, which everyone admits went into the stratosphere, where he claims that he is a world emperor. Do people not know this? Is this no one knows church history? It's not even controversial. Does anyone think that the Pope in the first millennium had world emperor powers? I don't know anybody who seriously thinks that. There are a few tradcats who will actually try to defend that ridiculous position, but like 99% of everyone in the world does not believe that or think that, even in the scholarly world. And in the Roman Catholic world and in the historians of the church, etc. Nobody believes that anymore. Because it was propped up on forgeries, and it's obviously preposterous. But can you people not understand that this was made dogma to be saved? You had to believe this? Do you not understand that? And I've had Roman Catholic, I don't have to believe in sanctum. What? You don't have to believe it? I mean, he literally excommunicates people that wouldn't believe it. There were monarchs and rulers of state that opposed him who got excommunicated. I'm talking about the papacy in this time period. Go read on sanctum if you don't know what this is.
By holy power, submitted herself unto you, happy in having regained her lost faith, close quote. The nephew of Pope Vigilius, the Roman deacon Rusticus, records that 2,500 Eastern clergy signed the formula of Hormisdas. This shows that no matter what resistance there was to papal authority or Leo's tome in the decades preceding, the resolution to the schism in the formula of Hormisdas involved a triumph of the primitive Roman view of the papacy. The net result is that the antique theory of Petrine supremacy upheld by Rome had become, at least at this moment, externally received by both Chalcedonian East and West in 519 AD. Now, the three chapters controversy. Here we see Emperor Justinian seeking to circumvent the rules of the church in order to enforce his own edicts to secure peace in the empire. However, despite his attempt to use an ecumenical council without the Bishop of Rome, he ended up cornering himself into an admission that the papacy is required for any doctrine or discipline to be ratified on a universally binding level. Pope Vigilius, despite his vacillations, ended up carving out another instance of papal supremacy in the midst of Oriental chaos.
Keep that in mind, because when Ubi brings this up, this is going to be a tough point for Eric Ybarra.
The Byzantine story on Vigilius is one of sainthood and divine supremacy. Lastly, during the midst of the Acacian Schism, a local dispute in Rome showcases the emergence of the claim that the Pope can be judged by no one, a principle accepted by many saints revered by the Orthodox Church. The dispute involved a rivalry to the papal throne between a certain Laurentius versus Pope St. Symmachus. Among other things, the driving force behind the resolution to this Roman schism was that even if the Roman pontiff were guilty of certain crimes, he cannot be judged by any earthly inferior, ecclesiastical or secular, precisely because he occupies the authoritative position that Jesus Christ gave to St. Peter, the head of the universal church. Multiple saints, including Pope Symmachus himself, Pope Hormisdas, who was a deacon notary at the councils that formulated the principle that the first see is judged by no one, St. Enodius of Pavia, St. Avitus of Milevis, and St. Laurentius of Milan, all testified to this. A century later, Pope St. Gregory the Great, known by the Greeks as the Dialogist, spoke in favor of Symmachus' side of this dispute, showing his own belief in the principle the first see is judged by none. In conclusion, we see councils, saints, and academic scholarship testify to the manifestation of Petrine authority over all Christians, its post-apostolic perpetuity in the Roman See, and its divine protection by Christ in virtue of his promise to St. Peter the Apostle.
Comfort, yes.
All right, so we have essentially Eric picking out what he thinks are probably the three strongest examples, and then we're going to move on to Ubi. I've not heard Ubi's opening statement yet, so let's see where Ubi goes with this. I'm hoping that he'll probably go into some of these articles that you've seen me post that he wrote back in 2019, but let's see.
All right, thanks very much, Eric.
Very lovely.
Ubi, you have 20 minutes for your opening statement. Whenever you begin, I'll click the timer.
Am I close enough?
Yep.
Okay. Papal primacy is not our issue, as we agree the Pope was the first and presided in love, that he was an archbishop of the world. Nor is papal supremacy our issue, as we agree the Pope was the highest, most supreme bishop, who in fulfilling the role as a synodal head was required to either ratify or reject the decisions of the synods at which he presided. And so his
Now
relation...
keep in mind that as the pentarchy structure develops, especially if you have the Szyszynski work here, which I highly recommend, it's a really good book. The recent publication of Papacy and the Orthodox by Edward Szyszynski, the chapter on all of this that they're debating today is really good. So if you want kind of a crash course in a lot of the obscure history and what they talked about in this debate, I highly recommend the Szyszynski book. It's an Oxford publication, so it's not some random Orthodox publisher. It's from Oxford University, and they go through pretty much all of the stuff that is in this debate in that chapter. This is it's called The Church of Rome in the Patristic Era is this chapter. But you'll notice that by the time of the Council of Trullo, and then Trullo is accepted by the 6th and ultimately the 7th Council, the patriarchal system was in place. And as is noted in the pages 186, 187, I say this because later on in the debate, Ibara is just totally off base when he says that the claims about the need of the patriarchs to sign off on something to be ecumenical or whatever, he says that's not true. It is true. It's mentioned here on pages 186 and 187. And this is where he says that the patriarchal system developed, and eventually they saw that as necessary for universality and for dogma. Even in the West, the Pope did not have a problem agreeing with and assenting to this patriarchal pentarchy type of system. And the reason I say that, remember, Eric tried to frame Vatican I as if it works with collegiality. But if you remember, Vatican I actually says that the Pope absolutely does not need the bishops. He can operate autocratically. But remember, that doesn't fit with papal minimalism, but that's precisely the route that Eric tried to take.
The relationship to the patriarchs was mirrored in the relationship of a patriarch to the archbishops, an archbishop to the metropolitans, and a metropolitan to the bishops. Hence the oft-used address for the Pope in the first millennium, Archbishop of the World, that was used repeatedly, specifically at Chalcedon. In the canonical literature, it is abundantly clear that the relationship between each grade of episcopal authority is a mirror of the relationship below it and or above it. We go over this for roughly 45 minutes in our very first video responding to the arguments of Eric Ybarra from May 2020. What we do object to is the Vatican I model of a dictator who can speak infallibly as he pleases with no recourse to any council or any institution, whose whims can become incontestable decrees, as we recently saw with the Latin Mass, which sadly is once again being decimated. But that is a position you must prove existed in the first millennium. It is a position that even the Pope's hand-picked scholars do not believe existed then, as we've seen from the Ravenna document, also from Chieti, also from Alexandria. Further, you bear the double burden of providing evidence that the Pope could and did speak infallibly on matters of faith and morals, with the intent to bind the faithful without the cooperation of his fellow bishops. It is not enough for you to show that in his role as the head of the Roman Synod, he issued excommunications and anathemas, as that is normal in a federation of churches. And that is exactly what the First Millennium Church did. They were a federation of churches, and many patriarchs and archbishops availed themselves of such a privilege, cutting off from their synodal communion all those who refused to comply. A prime example of this is a situation involving St. John Chrysostom and the Patriarch of Alexandria, St. Theophilus, which created a schism with Rome and was only healed under St. Cyril.
Oh, why aren't they texting me?
Now, that already begins to refute some of the argumentation of Eric when Eric was trying to argue that, well, the Pope saw himself as unilateral because he could excommunicate or say somebody way far off was excommunicated. Yeah, but other patriarchs did the exact same thing. So that itself doesn't prove anything.
But on the topic of infallibility, when the Council of Chalcedon critically examined the tome of Pope St. Leo, they used the councils of Nicaea and Ephesus as the standard. Had the tome been understood as ex cathedra, this type of behavior would have been unthinkable, as it would have already been considered dogma. But when one reads the pages upon pages of the bishops critically examining it, one cannot help but realize they had no concept of the tome as being ex cathedra, nor did St. Leo for that matter, because in letter 120, he states the Council of Chalcedon, quote, ratified his tome, and that it has been, quote, received by the judgment of the whole Christian.
I don't know why that started playing fast. I've already
there
tried
had
to
been
change
popes
it.
who were heretics, so the See of Rome had not always been.
This is acting all weird, so let me go back to Ubi.
Of Oriental.
Upon pages of the bishops critically examining it, one cannot help but realize, or any institution, bishops, archbishop to the metropolitans, do object to is the Vatican I model of a dictator.
Maybe I got too many
Alexandria
windows
St.
open.
Theophilus, which created a schism with Rome and was only healed under St. Cyril. But on the topic of infallibility, when the Council of Chalcedon critically examined the tome of Pope St. Leo, they used the councils of Nicaea and Ephesus as the standard. Had the tome been understood as ex cathedra, this type of behavior would have been unthinkable, as it would have already been considered dogma. But when one
now notice, Eric's argument is literally that Leo perhaps thought of his tome as ex cathedra, so therefore it's a demonstration of ex cathedra in the first millennium. And Ubi's point is that the ecumenical council did not receive it as that. It doesn't matter that Leo said this is an authoritative, necessary document. In the mind of the council, it still had to be investigated and compared against the previous teachings and against the measure, which was Cyril. The measure of Chalcedon is Cyril's teaching, not Leo's. Leo had to match up to what Cyril taught.
Reads the pages upon pages of the bishops critically examining it, one cannot help but realize they had no concept of the tome as being ex cathedra, nor did St. Leo for that matter, because in letter 120 he states the Council of Chalcedon, quote, ratified his tome, and that it has been, quote, received by the judgment of the whole Christian world.
Now, remember, Eric is trying to argue that because there was this cooperation in discussion between the Pope and the Council, that proves his position. But remember, ex cathedra is a much stronger claim than working together with other people and other people agreeing with or, quote, ratifying. Ratification means that we judge this to be the case. But remember, Eric had just argued no one judges the first see. So that the Council ratifies means they make a judgment which refutes Eric's claim that it's ex cathedra because no one judges the first see. He literally ended his opening statement with, no one judges the first see. Yet, Chalcedon is ratifying or judging whether or not Leo taught orthodoxy. And Eric actually concedes this when he admits that Honorius taught heresy. I'm not joking. Eric literally says Honorius was a heretic, and I concede that, which means that councils judge the popes, you see. And we're going to play that clip in a moment.
Unquote. Furthermore, when Bishop Vincent Gasser, at the behest of Pope Pius IX, wrote the official interpretation of Pastor Aeternus, known as the Relatio of Bishop Gasser, he did not include the tome in his examples when trying to prove papal infallibility in the first millennium. Yes, St. Flavian did say that all it would take is a letter from St. Leo to cure the situation, with Eutyches, that is. But that is because Eutyches himself says that is what will make him change his mind, not any commitment on the part of the Church of Constantinople. In other words, the tremendously influential person, that being Eutyches, who was actually the godparent of one of the chief eunuchs and very influential, the person who was causing all of the problems announced they would listen to whatever Leo told them. Of course, Eutyches only said that because he thought Leo would agree with him. When St. Leo did not, Eutyches immediately went to the Patriarch of Alexandria, Dioscorus. It's worth noting that Eutyches actually appealed to Alexandria and as well to other sees. But this is revealing. There's a revealing quotation from St. Leo's letter 14, section 12, in which he roots the primacy at every episcopal level to the distinction between St. Peter and the other apostles. He draws a parallel between the role of a metropolitan among the bishops
And real quick, I want to add that we're going to open it up to people who want to call in, who have debate topics, so they want to have a debate. When we finish with Ubi's opening statement here, I'm not going to play this whole debate. It's 3 hours. We will be here for forever. So if you want to watch the full debate, I'll put it in the chat right there. There it is. We'll play a couple clips after Ubi's opening statement, and then we will open it up for people who call in via Twitter. The way that you call in is through my X link that's in the show description. It's also in the chat, and you can make any argument you want. You can ask me a question. You don't have to debate, but we always give priority to people who want to come on and debate in just a moment.
Bishop among the metropolitans and the Pope among the archbishops. Quote, and again, this is letter 14, section 12. And though they have a common dignity, yet they did not have uniform rank, inasmuch as even among the blessed apostles, notwithstanding the similarity of their honorable estate, there was a certain distinction of power, and while the election of them all was equal, yet it was given to one to take the lead of the first, from which model has arisen a distinction among bishops also. And by an important ordinance it has been provided that everyone should not claim everything for himself, but that there should be in each province one whose opinions should have the priority among the brethren, and again that certain whose appointment is in the greater cities should undertake a fuller responsibility, through whom the care of the universal church should converge towards Peter's one seat, and nothing anywhere should be separated from its head. Letter 14:12. We know from canonical literature what the rights of bishops, metropolitans, and archbishops were, and St. Leo is drawing a parallel between those and the role of the papacy. So we have a very good idea of what St. Leo saw as the Pope's role, and it was not Vatican I, but Conciliar ecclesiology, as the Orthodox Church teaches to this day. Further, St. Leo states that the higher-ups, quote, their opinions should have the priority among the brethren. Notice it's priority, not autocracy. His vision is essentially that of Apostolic Canon 34 on the universal level, which states that the head of the synod and the members should do everything in concert, not one alone.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because this is often overlooked in this discussion. Canon 34, which are the ancient, earliest versions of canon law, church law. Canon 34 is that the bishops of every nation must acknowledge those that are first among them and account them as their head. So notice that this is a universal, diffused structure where each nation kind of has a primate or an archbishop or a what will eventually perhaps be metropolitans, and then later on pentarchy, right? And they must do things in concert and in accord, right? And you'll notice that it never says anything about a superbishop, just like Canon 6 of Nicaea doesn't say anything about a superbishop. So what Ubi's arguing is that the structure of the synod and the bishop and the primates and the archbishop mirrors the ecumenical synod and that structure within the ecumenical councils, with Rome first, and then Alexandria, Antioch, etc. It's a movable structure, by the way, because as you get Constantinople, which Rome later concedes to the new structure with Constantinople amongst the pentarchy, if you read Canon 6 of Nicaea, Constantinople doesn't exist yet. It's not amongst the that structure yet. It's not a metropolitan yet. But Canon 6 of Nicaea says Rome, Antioch, Alexandria. Those are the three early sees. And those are, by the way, Petrine sees. But this structure is clearly not the Vatican I structure. And that's exactly why Chieti and Alexandria admit this point, which is what Eric is trying to go against, trying to prove that, well, it was still there even though it wasn't mentioned. It was just... So arguments from silence, basically.
Moving on to Pope St. Felix III.
The reason I say argument from silence is because it's not in these canons. I understand Eric's giving what he thinks are historical examples, but the point is that the canons don't mention this kind of stuff. The canonical arguments are like hardcore on the Orthodox side. And Roman Catholics never talk about these canons because they don't support the Roman Catholic position. That's exactly why Eric has to go to papal claims about the papacy itself to prove his position. You'll notice that in that and a bunch of later on supposed Byzantine Russian historians. He's not going to the canons, which express the universal mind of the church in the synods, which absolutely nowhere back up the Roman Vatican I position. And in fact, every ecumenical council includes canons which contradict the Vatican I position.
Which you brought up in your introduction, it is often pointed out that St. Felix excommunicated blessed apologize. It is often pointed out that St. Felix excommunicated blessed Acacius of Constantinople, and that is true. That is true. But far from exercising some sort of Vatican I prerogative, as you would imagine, or as you would argue, his successor, Pope St. Gelasius, states in letter 10.4 that Pope Felix did what any bishop could do in choosing to excommunicate a bishop who failed to uphold the Council of Chalcedon. Quote, "Does Euphemius not realize that Acacius was condemned according to the formula of the Synod of Chalcedon? It is permissible not only for an apostolic leader, but for every pontiff to separate from Catholic communion whomsoever they like, and whatever place they like, according to the rule of the very heresy that has previously been condemned." Letter 10.4 of St. Gelasius. In letter 12.8, St. Gelasius makes the same claim in regard to the heretics Timothy, Peter, and Peter of Antioch, and again in letter 27.3.
TikTok keeps trying to tell me that I have secretly wavy hair. I'm gonna prove them wrong. Oh my god, they're right. I started using...
This is because the great St. Gelasius, far from seeing himself as an unlimited autocrat of Vatican I, understands his role as a ratifier of proposed universal synodal decisions. In fact, in letter 1.3, St. Gelasius shows he believes the episcopacy is the highest office in the church, meaning that any office presumed to be above it can work only through the synodal model and is not an autocracy. Quote, "Beyond the presbyterate, what is more important to the governance of the church, if not the episcopate?" In letters 1.1, 1.9, 10.4 through 5, 10.9, and 27.4 through 5, we see St. Gelasius stressing that because Rome is a synodal head, those synodal decisions that have been ratified by his predecessors have been made permanent and can only be undone via the synodal process, with St. Gelasius or his successors ratifying the decision. For St. Gelasius, as for the other popes, especially St. Leo, Rome's role was analogous to that of a keystone in an arch. The keystone was put in as the crowning and last piece, once the rest of the arch had been constructed. So while a keystone on its own did not make an arch, without a keystone, no arch could exist. It's just synodal ecclesiology. Now, in letters 1.38 through 39, St. Gelasius even laments that he might be judged by the church for receiving heretics into communion, and he stands in stark contrast to the claims made concerning Pope St. Symmachus, which we cover in our video entitled Papal Forgeries. But Saints Avitus of Vienne and Enodius of Pavia are stating that the Bishop of Rome cannot be judged, but the context of those two quotations, as well as the statements made by Pope St. Gelasius and much later by Pope Innocent III, as well as the depositions of one of Symmachus' successors, Silverius, and the events surrounding the Fifth Ecumenical Council, it becomes clear that St. Avitus and St. Enodius, were speaking on moral failings, not heresy, which in and of itself is suspect enough, since St. Symmachus was on trial for supposedly having an affair with a nun.
Relics of St. Peter.
Now, with St. Agapetus, on the topic of him, there's really nothing special about a pope leading a council in Constantinople that condemns not a patriarch, but a patriarch who had resigned sometime previously. This is merely a synodal act, not the type of Vatican I autocracy you need to prove. And Pope Silverius was deposed and exiled. He was actually deposed and exiled. But when Emperor St. Justinian heard of this, he demanded Silverius be sent back and be given a proper trial. Instead, though, he was handed over to Pope Vigilius, who exiled him and allowed him to starve to death. Again, not a peep was heard that the Pope couldn't be judged. And even if we were to argue that Vigilius being the Pope could judge Silverius, it begs the question of how Vigilius could be a valid Pope if an invalidly deposed Pope was still alive, meaning that Vigilius would still have been a non-Pope judging a Pope. On the topic of St. Hormisdas, the gem...
Note that, because that will be brought up again, that point about Vigilius, precisely later on when Ubi really makes Ibara collapse. So we're almost done with Ubi's opening statement. Then we're going to look at the, and that point on Vigilius is one of the key points. Now, the description of this used to say very explicit. I remember I thought that it was way more explicit that they said the papacy of Vigilius and something else. I don't see that written anywhere. It used to say that, but. If that's one of the premises of the debate, and Ybarra explicitly says, I don't know and I have no answer to that, then that to me is pretty clearly, at least in half of the debate, Ybarra saying that he lost. And we'll play that clip and you can see what I mean, but it's on that Vigilius point right there.
Any pop apologetics quote mine is going to be the libellus of Hormisdas, due to two lines in particular. Quote, in the Apostolic See, the Catholic religion has always been preserved without blemish, and quote, and quote, in which the firmness of the Christian religion is whole and true. It's rarely acknowledged, and in your book you simply denied that other versions of the libellus existed, and I found that claim to be preposterous, as is well documented in the primary sources, even by St. Hormisdas and his emissaries. Quote, and this is a suggestio, meaning a report, written to St. Hormisdas from Dioscorus the deacon. After much negotiation, when they, the archimandrites too, were won over by arguments, they presented libelli by all kinds and methods. Further, St. Hormisdas, in his letter to the ecumenical patriarch Epiphanius of Constantinople, writes, quote, also let the contents of the libelli which they have presented be included in your report, end quote. He later continues, and since in your letter your love has made mention of the Jerusalemites whose recent profession was reported to us, we considered it necessary either to review what was written or to indicate what was agreeable. None of those three quotations above make any sense if there was only one form of the libellus, and the evidence indicates that the vast majority of those who signed did not sign the libellus, but rather a libellus. They themselves compose independently. We even have one from the bunch of monks from Lebanon. But what follows the last quotation is a several paragraph long outline written by St. Hormisdas on what the libelli being offered to him must be composed of. And it consists of teachings on the Trinity, a focus on Christology, and even some Mariology, but no mention of the supposed papal claims in the initial libellus. In fact, St. Peter is not even mentioned in the outline that he gives. Assuming St. Hormisdas had been insistent on papal claims in the first libellus, why would he suddenly omit those as required in future libelli unless he himself saw them as the irrelevant rhetoric that they really were, just chest pounding? The issue is really that you guys latch onto the term always, and you assume that always means every single time. But when we look at quotations from other writers from the same period, we find absolute terms like always and never, in every way, at all times, when used to describe historical events, are usually used in the same way it is in English, and that means generally speaking, or tends to.
All right,
this is an important point.
It is time for our absolute biggest deal of the year on Daily Wire Plus. That is,
case in point, most of the bishops present at Chalcedon had been involved in a schism with Rome over Ephesus II in 449 that lasts until the summer prior to Chalcedon in autumn 451. And they wrote to St. Leo concerning Canon 28, this will show also due regard for the pious emperors who have confirmed as law the judgment of your sacredness, and the See of Constantinople will receive its recompense for having always shown you great ardor in the cause of piety, and for having zealously allied itself with you for the sake of harmony. Never mind that only months before they had not been in communion with Rome. They had always shown St. Leo great ardor in the cause of piety. How many heretics and corrupt men sat on the throne of Alexandria prior to Dioscorus? Arians, whatnot. But speaking of Dioscorus, St. Leo states, the Church of Alexandria, which has always been a house of prayer, is not now.
So in other words, patristic usage of always, just like head, does not mean what Rome oftentimes wants it to mean. These exclusive literal statements. And you'll notice that later on, when Ubi asked this of Eric about certain statements, Eric admits that it doesn't always mean that literally. But Roman Catholics want it to mean that when they need it to mean that for their position. So it's a double standard.
Not to be a den of robbers? I have numerous other statements like this from the period under discussion that I will be presenting during the cross-examination. Regardless, when all of these men are taken into account, there are a lot of always and a lot of never, a lot of grand statements. And that style of rhetoric one encounters predominantly in societies that have not gone through an industrial revolution. Yet even now we rarely use always and we rarely use never to refer to a consistently positive or consistently negative event. So going back to the libellus of Hormisdas, the question is, was Pope St. Hormisdas really unaware of popes who had failed to keep the faith unsullied? Was he really unaware of Pope Marcellinius, Marcellinus, who had sacrificed to idols during the persecution, or Pope St. Liberius, who signed an Arian confession and condemned St. Athanasius? Was he really unaware that Pope Felix II had been an Arian? Furthermore, even if he wasn't aware of those, he would be proven wrong 3 decades later when Pope Vigilius repeatedly flip-flopped on the condemnation of the 3 chapters, and the 7th century when Pope Honorius, writing in official capacity to Patriarch Sergius of Constantinople, endorsed monoenergism and monothelitism, and was condemned by an ecumenical council for doing so. We are faced with 3 options.
Key point.
St. Hormisdas was just incorrect. He didn't know. 2, he was lying or bluffing. Or 3, he used the term always the way that we use it, and he meant typically or tends to. I prefer the 3rd option. It was a Roman way to speak in generalities. It is not that always simply has a different meaning in Latin and Greek than English, but rather that it carries the same meaning, and that is a tendency towards or generally yes. In fact, we can look at how I've used it today, or rather how I will. When I came in, I told Matt that I've always enjoyed Pints with Aquinas. There are some shows that I didn't, but almost all of them I did. Okay. If the audience were to peruse our own usage of the word, they would find that always almost never means every single instance. Okay. This is why Christ says, I'm with you always until the end of time. He has to qualify the always with until the end of time. But let us pretend that the libellus of Hormisdas does have Vatican I presuppositions behind it. One would then expect that the same bishops who had supposedly so eagerly signed it surely would not disregard the voice of the Pope on faith and morals in the future. But they did in the dispute over the Theopatrite formula, in which Rome showed itself to be unfavorable to the Theopatrite formula and advocated against it. But the Eastern bishops, who were now in communion with Rome, insisted on using it anyway. One might point out that there are currently many Catholic bishops who are in communion with Rome, yet they hold to degenerate morality, like the German bishops. But if that is a parallel that can be drawn, what does that say about the bishops who in 519 could supposedly be cajoled into signing the libellus in the first place? Finally, we come to the fact that Vigilius was deposed from his office during the 7th session of the 5th Ecumenical Council in 553. Quote, since therefore he, Vigilius, has acted in this way, we've pronounced that his name is alien to Christians as not to be read out in the diptycha. One may proudly point out that this was struck from the Acts after Vigilius accepted the condemnation of the 3 chapters and was received back into communion by the East, but by pointing that out, you inadvertently admit that he had to submit to the judgment of his fellow bishops, something anathema to Vatican I. But Vigilius' condemnation is only compounded by the fact that earlier the North African bishops had also in fact excommunicated Vigilius for, as they saw it, wavering on Chalcedon. Now, you might argue that this was outside of their rights.
By the way, that's a key point too for precisely the clips that we're going to see in just a second.
We're forced to deal with the fact that there was, to our knowledge, absolutely no repercussions or repentance required of those bishops who had excommunicated him in the aftermath of the council or for centuries thereafter. It was simply accepted as a matter of fact that bishops could and did excommunicate a pope. And when Vigilius then accepted the condemnation of the 3 chapters, that the bishops could then admit the pope back into communion.
That's felt like that was a really strong opening statement. So we're going to move on over. Now, if you want to watch the full debate, those are the opening statements. We're going to look at some more highlights, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. Here's the full debate in the chat over on Matt Frad's channel. And the highlighted points that I thought were really good were this first. We'll play my clip first, and then we'll play Luigi's clip. So this, I thought, was really where Eric faltered. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes the debate focuses on infallibility, and part and parcel with infallibility is indefectibility. And the Vatican I position also argues for indefectibility. The Roman See can never defect, can never teach error, can never teach heresy. And yet, Eric admits that there were heretical popes. How in the world do you maintain indefectibility? And basically it ends up being, well, the papacy is indefectible until he defects, which is to say a meaningless statement. So here is where, this is 2 clips combined where I felt like it was really strong, and then we'll play Luigi's clip.
Who never departed from the traditions of the fathers and directed the Church of God in utter tranquility. Do you think that's correct?
Not literally.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, wait a minute. So in this instance, when it hurts Eric's case, it's not universal, always literal language. You just heard Eric admit that.
By the mid-5th century, how many popes had like heretical views?
Yeah, this is a hotly debated issue. So, I mean, there's questions related to the pontificate of Liberius and Felix, but there's both sides. Yeah.
Okay.
He says, yeah, there's been a few. Yeah. So Eric is kind of conceding there have been heretical popes. Okay. And Eric, by the way, as far as I'm aware, does concede that Honorius was a heretic and was excommunicated by the Sixth Council.
Theodora, you had mentioned this letter.
Yes.
Okay. For that Holy See, speaking of Rome, has precedence over all churches in the world for many reasons, and above all for this, that it is free from any taint of heresy, and that no bishop of heterodox opinion has ever sat upon its throne, but has kept the grace of the apostles undefiled. And do you think he's correct? I mean,
unless he elsewhere condemns another pope.
Okay. So as you had mentioned, maybe he didn't know. I mean, sounds like he's out in the boondocks when he writes. I mean, can the constitutions of the church be destroyed?
Constitution. The Holy Spirit has done through the churches.
Right, and these guys are talking about what the Holy Spirit has done through the churches. Always, always, always.
That's right.
So I mean, okay, so in your
1
case,
minute remaining.
Oh, thank you. So in this case, I mean, when taking into account that there had been heretical popes, I mean, I don't see how you can maintain that the always there should be the exception.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, look, I believe Honorius was a condemned heretic, and I believe Vatican I.
Yeah, so there you go. I believe contradictory positions. The ecumenical councils can condemn popes, excommunicate them, but the Roman See never fails, never teaches error, and is never judged by anyone. The Roman See is judged by no one. And Eric just said that Honorius was a heretic and was excommunicated. So in other words, the papacy is indefectible until it defects, which is to say nothing, which is to say that it's useless. Now, Luigi's clip is also probably the best. I mean, this one is probably the strongest point where Eric just gives up. Now, remember, this was originally listed as one of the terms or the propositions under debate, the papacy of Vigilius. So this is Eric conceding what was listed originally as one of the premises under debate.
Do you think in the case of Saint Silverius, he was deposed by Belisarius, he's sent to Justinian, finds out, says, you have to give this guy a trial. He's handed over to Vigilius. And Vigilius, he was a horrible person. I don't remember from the sounds of it. He was horrible. I mean, how does that work out? If Vigilius is the pope, but he's judging a former pope, that means that the deposition of the former pope had to be valid. If Vigilius is a pope, if the deposition was not invalid, and Vigilius is judging him, then you still have the situation of a pope being judged by a non-pope.
I'll be candid with you. This is something that I have not really had a satisfactory answer to.
Okay.
So I'm not really satisfied with my answer to that question.
Oh, so the very thing under debate, the papacy of Vigilius, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. Imagine if an Orthodox person in a debate said that. Literally every Roman Catholic would be going crazy. They would all be clipping it nonstop. We would be hearing about this endlessly. It's over, bro. Ortho bros, it's over. Pack it up. Time to come home to Rome. Their top guy literally says about the thing under debate, the papacy of Vigilius, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't got an answer to that and I don't know. Let's play it again for you hard-headed goofballs.
The situation of a pope being judged by a non-pope.
I'll be candid with you. This is something that I have not really had a satisfactory answer to.
Okay.
So I'm not really satisfied with my answer to that question.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we've been saying about these people all along. And so that, I think, was the key point where I think really it was over. I mean, this was the kill shot. Because it's not just Vigilius, but you understand that Eric's whole premise, as we said, was I don't really have to demonstrate the Vatican I positions, except that maybe there's a few places where you could deduce it. But Eric, you have a position that is easily disproven by one dogmatic contradiction. Because remember, Eric argued earlier that no one judges the first see. Now he's admitting that, yeah, you can judge the first see, and the first see can be it can defect, You can have heretics in the first see. Ecumenical councils judge the first see, excommunicate popes. He's admitted all this. So it's over, Roman bros. It's over, papal bros. It's over for you guys. And it's over right there. And how many years has Eric been doing apologetics about the papacy? Maybe 10 years now? I'm going to say around 10 years. So 10 years and he's not got a good answer to one of the key arguments about Vigilius? Guys, is it time to maybe think about the fact that if your own Vatican is admitting all these points, it's over. It's over for you guys. Let's hear this one more time.
We'll have the situation of a pope being judged by a non-pope.
I'll be candid with you. This is something that I have not really had a satisfactory answer to.
Okay.
So I'm not really satisfied with my answer to that question.
Oh, but the papacy is still true and it's still unfalsifiable because maybe there were some quotes that you could read. Now, guys, we're going to open it up now to debate. It's open forum for anybody who wants to call in and make an argument, you make a case. You want to call out this or that position. It's not about personal issues. It's about the debates and issues that we're discussing today. MKG says for $5, we need 3 merch t-shirts. Unmute, why are you giggling, and how do you know that? Those are actually pretty good slogans. I actually agree with that. Can I be candid with you? Can I be candy with you if it's going to be Eric Candy Ybarra? Anonymous $5. If you go to Anton Wisbinski's channel, I have no idea who Anton Wisbinski is. So, by the way, is the stream still working? My computer is getting overheated with all of the. By the way, here's Ubi's forgeries video. I'll give you guys that as well. Is Streamlabs still streaming? I can't tell. Can you guys still see me? I like how Eric just kind of like gave up right there. I'll be honest with you, I just don't really know. But you should still believe in the papacy though, because I wrote a book about it and I don't want to admit I'm wrong. And it would be humiliating. Harry Serpanos, $1. Here's the full video. Thank you for that Wes Huff debate. Appreciate that. MKG, $5. What do you think about Wes Huff? I don't know anything about him. So that was my first exposure to Wes Huff. Is the video still working? Because my stream... Okay, good. We guys can still see me, and then I'll just ignore that. SLID 58F468EB16, $1. The Billy Corgan. I keep wanting to say Billy Corgan.
The world is a vampire. The world is a black pyramid.
I'd rather have Billy Corgan. How about we have Billy Corgan debate Billy Carson?
Set the chain. Secret destroyer. Even though I know.
I'm gonna have to work on my Billy Corgan. I did a Billy Corgan impression to Jamie the other day. It was actually pretty good, but
even though I know.
I have to work on it, but would y'all like to? Who would win in a Billy Carson Billy Corgan debate? They could go out smashing pumpkins together afterwards. Billy Carson could fly his pyramid and squish a bunch of pumpkins with a giant We Was Kang's pyramid, and then Billy Corgan could take his guitar and smash pumpkins. That sounds like a party right there. Funko Fanatic, $3. Oh wait, if you watch the first 20 minutes, that will be Billy Carson's last debate with any Christians. Yeah, exactly. Funko Fanatic, $3. You're wrong about Billy Carson. The Sinai Bible say Jesus wasn't crucified and he have a wife. Educate yourself. Exactly. I need to get back into that. I need that zeitgeist, but the remix. Billy Carson is basically a remix of zeitgeist. He's the chopped and screwed version of zeitgeist. Adamantes, $1. Yo, Jay, I'm rewatching your Ibara debate from back in the day for the 3rd time. I actually think you clapped his cheeks. What do you recommend that I read to debunk the idea that popes can be heretics? Well, I'm not going to recommend you read anything that debunks the ideas that Pope can be heretic popes because I think they can. And you just heard Eric Ybarra say they can. So, Braden Morris, $5. Jay, tell Slowboy Whiteboard, I'm sorry. I promised I wasn't going to build a tower. Thanks for all that you do. I'm attending an Orthodox church. I want to become a catechumen soon. God bless you. And Jamie, keep singing your Funko Pop gospel. Thank you. Will do. Liturgical Funko Monk, $10. I really love your content, Jay. Thank you for introducing me to Orthodox and getting away from the grasp of Matt Dilla Monkey. You climbed up in that tree. Thank you. The Black Man, $10. Do you plan on watching Billy Exposed? Video coming out at 7. Oh, am I watching Billy's exposing video at 7? Billy Carson? I don't know what you're talking about. Billy. So is Billy Carson gonna expose Wes Huff, Casper Van Diem? At 7? Where do we even follow Billy? He's got 500,000 subscribers on Instagram. That's crazy, dude. Oh, he got 666K over here on YouTube. So you said he's about to drop a exposed video? Where is he dropping his exposed video? I can't find this. Let's see. Let's go to his website. What's he got going on over here on his website? I need a master course. I need a master course in forbidden knowledge, learning crypto experiences. Alien Encounter. Look at all this nonsense. Alien Encounters. Joe Rogan, PBD. I mean, look at all the people that have had this goofus on. Rogan, Sean Ryan, Schultz. Like, what? Where's his exposed? He's gonna expose somebody. Who's he gonna expose? Wes Huff. I don't know what you're talking about. But it does sound like fun to watch his video. Roll stakes $10. Here's $10 for you to drop the hottest Matt Frad track on this side of the hemisphere for 2024. I might drop a Mad Frad track. We'll see. Elijah Yassi, who is a conciliarist heretic, induced a new distinction. This is Kitty Cat, $5. Yassi says that, number one, the Pope teaching on faith and morals is one distinction versus the Pope trying to bind the church on a teaching of faith and morals. He thinks this gets out of the Honorius problem. If the first see is judged by no one and the ecumenical council judges the first see, he can make up all the distinctions he wants. Anonymous, $3. In your opinion, if you stack Bitcoin, does this undo the need for an IRA? What about an IRA from Swan? I don't know. I've been thinking about that. I mean, there's probably going to be advantages and disadvantages to either route. But I mean, you can do a Bitcoin IRA. Varela II, $3. In your research, have you come across anything that suggests that there's a connection between Vatican I and the Napoleonic Cordat of 1801? I haven't found anything. It's hinted at in the spy book that I'm reading, right? It doesn't mention Vatican I, but it mentions Napoleon and the Vatican and their connection and this kind of stuff going on. But I don't know. It's a really interesting question. You would probably need to ask a historian of Vatican I and Napoleon. I'm not a historian on that topic, really. Anonymous, $5. I've been struggling with the evidence of human existence for hundreds of thousands of years. Well, all you got to do is watch Billy Carson, dog. He will prove to you our ancient alien God origins. How can you fit that into the narrative of the fall if death pre-existed Adam? I've never seen a rebuttal. Well, I don't believe in aeons of existence of billions of years and all that stuff. That's just a myth, a narrative of the soy science men. Dave, $1.06. There's a difference between Orthodox churches. It's called jurisdiction. Yes. And I'm not being rude. I'm saying, there's different jurisdictions. There's not a Russian church where I live. Should I go to the Coptic church? No. The Coptic church is not part of the Orthodox church. They're a schismatic group. Should I go to a different church or a Russian Orthodox church? Well, any of the Orthodox churches, meaning the canonical Orthodox churches. Balu, $1. What about quantum authority? Maybe the Pope possesses quantum authority and retroactively he can give himself through retroactive causation ancient authority. That's an argument that I'm surprised though. I mean, they went with the Bayesian spreadsheet argument for the papacy. They went with all kinds of crazy stuff. Wait until we have a quantum papacy apologist. I mean, Roman Catholics believe anything. They could set up an AI that argues for quantum papal apologetics, and they'll believe it. I like that. In fact, I might create an AI and use papal quantum apologetics. Anonymous, $3. Considering the sinister doings of big tech and the technocratic elite, what in your opinion should we as truth seekers do? Should we not be using smartphones, etc.? I mean, you can choose to not use a smartphone. It's just going to be difficult to get around in the world. I don't know. I mean, maybe there is an argument to be made for that, and maybe switching away from smartphones to, just using your laptop and having a... We've contemplated going back to flip phones. I mean, I think you can still get flip phones. So do all your business on your laptop or whatever, and then do your, just don't have a... Maybe there's an argument to be made for not having a smartphone. Something to consider. Harry Sopranos, $3. You nailed all the Tradcasts today. God bless you, Jay. Thank you for all this comedy, too. Hey, thank you, Harry Sopranos. Much appreciated. Guys, I want to remind you, too, that before we open it up, you can head on over to chalk.com. Use the promo code J40ALIFE to get 40% off all these great products over at Chalk. This is the show's sponsor. They are excellent when it comes to supplementation. I've been using Chalk myself, literally ingesting it for years, and I can tell you that it does help. It does work. It is a great product, especially my favorite, the Tonkat Ali, proven to boost testosterone in studies. And I would say you got to combine this with the gym. This is not some kind of like, take this pill and you'll be an awesome beige Chadman. No, you got to combine it with the work, son. Get to work. Be sure and head on over to chalk.com, CHOQ.com. I would recommend that performance stack right there for the dudes. Hey, there's also stacks for ladies. Ladies can benefit by going to the female vitality stack over here. Just use that promo code J44LIFE for a 44% discount. It is recurring, but you can unsubscribe and cancel at any time. So again, JAY44LIFE, Billy Carson. My boy Billy Carson over there with that Maybe we should make Billy Carson the quantum pope, and then he can elect Billy Corgan to be vice pope. That sounds based and trad.
The world is a vampire. The Pope is a vampire. Even though I know, I suppose I'll show.
How's that? That's better. That Billy Corgan messing up my vocal cords. Billy Corgan. Despite all my rage, I am still just a... I couldn't think of anything. I was trying to tie it in to today's discussion. I can't think of anything. Anyway. All right, we're going to open it up. That's enough clowning around. Enough clowning. By the way, I'm almost at 100K, y'all. On Twitter, obviously. If you want to help me out, follow me over here on X. There's the link right there. Help me get up to 100K. We're at 88.6. By the way, did y'all see my Lord Voldemort? I thought it was a pretty good Lord Voldemort. I mean, I don't know if I can judge myself over there, but this was a pretty good Lord Voldemort. If y'all didn't see it, go check it out. If you missed my high-profile interview with Jessica Reed Krause, she's massive over on Instagram, massive over on Substack, million on Instagram, 500K on Substack. We talked about her journey out of the left death cult. So you got prominent people leaving. She calls it a left death cult. Go check out that interview with her. Oh, here's a good one. Flashback. Pope Francis, 2014. Marxists and Christians have a common mission to work together. I mean, guys, Roman Catholics, like, bruh, like, what more do you need? Like, literally every day this guy's trying to tell y'all to become Orthodox. All right. Where are we at? AC, $10. Jay, everything I made on Hawk Tua. Oh, he's talking about Hawk Tua coin, $10. I made a joke. I said, I'm gonna dump all my Bitcoin. I'm gonna buy all the Hawk Tua coins up while they're on this dip, while they're on this 99% dip after that rug pull. Then when Hawk Tua goes back up, I'm gonna buy all the Bitcoin, and then I'm gonna fire Michael Saylor. And people were like, "Are you being serious, bro? Just go check yourself into the homeless encampment. There's no hope for you. If you thought I was being serious, just give up, man. Just go enter a monastery. It's over for you. Give up, man. I'm just joking. But some people were like, you got to be careful. People think you're being serious. Like, who couldn't see that was a rug pull? If you're that stupid to think that, I mean, I feel sorry for y'all. Catholic becoming Orthodox, $3. Are most religions Neoplatonic and all naturalism leads to Nietzsche? But the Orthodox essence energy distinction answers a lot of deep philosophical conflicts. I don't know if all the religions are basically Neoplatonic. I think a lot of religions have a similar structure or are influenced by Neoplatonism. But a lot of religions are older than Neoplatonism. So no, I wouldn't say that. Does naturalism lead to Nietzscheanism? I mean, possibly. It could easily logically lead there. But I don't think that it necessarily leads there. It could lead to, I don't know, it leads you in a lot of different directions. I do think the essence energy distinction answers a lot of philosophical dilemmas, but maybe not all of them. Quantum Commenter, $5. Eric Ybarra really missed the chance to expound quantum papal theory. I can't wait for Francis to update or to drop that update. Yeah, exactly. How long until we see like quantum papal theory? I mean, this is like we're in the domain of my skit, like the Pope of the Future. Does everybody remember my skit? I mean, we're in this domain of Pope of the Future. Like, it's now coming to fruition. Remember this?
As you strive to understand the words I speak to you with your chemical soup, primordial chemical soup brain,
that's supposed to be a monkey. That's supposed to be a monkey sound. Anyway, if you want to check out this, I mean, they might as well just go into this domain of it. Like, I mean, Francis took us to the quantum Pope of the Future domain. I mean, next up is they should meld Billy Carson and Billy Corgan into an AI, and that should be the Pope. Billy Corgson as the Pope of the Future as an AI. That's the quantum Pope that I was predicting in this prophetic sketch right here. AC sends 20 bucks and says, bro, who cares if the Pope said that we should work with Marxists and has a gay pilgrimage? He also one time made fun of the Skittles. So he is a GROYPER, obviously. Well, yeah, Francis throws a bone to the trads every now and then to just keep them on the hook, and it works. It works perfectly. And it's funny because even Tim Gordon says that he throws a bone to them, and they still eat it up. All right, let's open it up. Disagreements, debates, questions. We got 5 people in line. FDA is with us still. Thank you to FDA. Let's see. First up is Average Inquirer. What's up, dude?
Hello, Jay.
Hey.
So I've
Can I ask like a super short question before like my question on Roman Catholicism and one of their arguments?
Sure.
Would you ever consider doing a collaboration with Dr. Nathan Jacobs? Because I really like his Orthodox philosophy, and I'm curious if you'd ever be willing to engage with him.
Yeah, FDA is good friends with him, and I think FDA just had him to speak at Montanica, so I'm always open to that. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've never heard his full take on epistemology and tags, so I would love to hear a conversation about that.
Yeah, the thing is with a lot of these people, I never know whether they like me or not because, you know, people think, oh, he's controversial. I don't even think I'm that controversial, but, you know, I never know if this person, you know, secretly hates me or I have no reason to think that. I've never talked to him. I don't know him. So, but.
Okay, cool.
I'm not at all opposed to that at all.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay. And then, so one thing I've seen a lot of Roman Catholics commenting on about the whole debate thing is that Ubi has a sort of manufactured ecclesiology because they claim that there's different sects within Orthodoxy where you have some who argue this form of pentarchy and then others who say that there's all these different normative means for understanding what is a true council and what isn't. And they say, well, we have a principle that says that Jesus established a means by to determine a true council, and Orthodox don't have it, and they have all these different opinions. So I'd like to know what your basic thought is on that.
Well, I mean, the Roman Catholic world is split as to whether Vatican II is acceptable, dogmatic. Is it half dogmatic? Does it have documents that you can reject? I mean, so how has that worked out with Vatican II? And again, they're confusing two different topics. The fact that within the world of Orthodoxy, people have theological debates and disagreements doesn't mean that we don't have a means of certitude. So they're confusing, just like Protestants do, just like a lot of people do, individual certitude with the idea of normative authority in history. So the fact that there's normative authority, that Jesus gave the church a means by which people could be bound to a certain interpretation, namely, for us, the College of Bishops, the ecumenical councils, etc. For the Roman Catholic, it's the papacy. Like, you're not in any better position. It sounds on the surface like it might be a better position because we just go with what that guy says. But in actual fact, in history, and in the 20th century especially, how has that, it doesn't actually work in practice. It's a thing in theory, but in practice, it doesn't get you in any better position because, let me give an example. Why is there not a dogmatic statement about what the dogmatic statements are?
Yeah, I think I've heard you bring that up before, where some people will like bring up Denzinger dogma, but it's not actually a dogmatized list of popes or dogmatized list of dogmatic statements.
No,
right?
and it's much more than Denzinger. There's more than just Denzinger that you're bound by, because Denzinger just has papal affirmations, but there's also the ecumenical councils. There's also encyclicals. None of that's in Denzinger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. That's all a very good point. Thank you for that. And then I just want to do a quick aside. On the topic of cell phones, which you just brought up, Luke Smith, who Kyle just interviewed, does a lot of content about like disconnecting from technology. Mm-hmm. And he uses Graphene OS. I use it too, as a sort of dumb phone with like a few simple apps. Mm. And I think you might want to look into his content on like disconnecting from that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll definitely check that out.
Yeah. Also, he does a lot of content on like why he thinks Monero is the future of cryptocurrency rather than Bitcoin. So I think you might also find that interesting.
Yeah, the problem with this is, and I'm not against hearing his case or his arguments. Thank you for that, average ortho inquirer. But the problem is that Bitcoin is already way ahead of all of these other options. And Bitcoin is also already sort of been accepted by institutions. Now, I know that that's a double-edged sword because a lot of us don't like the institutions and the government, the state. But for anything to become the global standard, it's going to have to overcome that hurdle. And the problem with the extreme privacy option coins is that they're never going to get over that hurdle, which Bitcoin has just gotten over. So the point is that realistically, I don't think there's any real case scenario where Monero overtakes Bitcoin or replaces Bitcoin. It's already way ahead. And to get to the point where Bitcoin is, it's going to be a huge, massive hurdle. And usually the people who are arguing that Monero will do this or could do this, I think, in my opinion, are extremely idealistic. Maybe they have a case about extreme privacy coins, but I've been seeing people try to convince me of Monero since 2017 when I got into this, and I've never seen anybody give me a good reason why. I'm glad that I didn't buy into their arguments. I would be way worse off had I listened to all the Monero people. And the problem is that in the trilemma, anything you sacrifice, there's going to be a heavy price for any of those things. For example, a lot of people tell you that, oh, Bitcoin is not going to be the future because of the it doesn't have the speed and the scalability. But when you go in the direction of speed, you're sacrificing the other things, right? You're sacrificing, decentralization or perhaps security and encryption. So that's why everybody's always trying to find the best option of the three of the trilemma. I think Bitcoin is still the best option overall. And even if everybody's already on board to the point of $2 trillion, like, it's going to be really hard for anything to catch up to that. And I don't think people who have bought into the promise of Bitcoin and the evangelization that Saylor has done, it's going to be very difficult to convince all those people to switch into something like Monero. And if you look at how has Bitcoin performed against Monero in the last 10 years, and had you listened to all those people, you would be a lot poorer than the people that stuck to Bitcoin. Now, I'm not saying that's all about making bank and all that, but I mean, a big part of this is how are we going to store our value and our wealth over time? And so Bitcoin won out in that, I think. Geocentric pleb. What do you think of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment? Oh, I love it. It was one of the first. Well, actually, it's not the first. I mean, Lord of the Rings had a big effect on me, but I read Crime and Punishment in a grad class. I sat and read it all in a few nights in my rocking chair, and was moved by it. It was I felt affected by a novel. I have not yet read the totality of Brothers Karamazov, but I definitely like Notes from the Underground. So I definitely intend to get eventually into more Dostoevsky. But I've noticed, like, when I did, we did a whole episode with Tristan and Mark Hackard on Dostoevsky. I mean, nobody reads books, so I don't know what to, like, nobody watches the live streams when I cover books. And even when I cover movies, it's more people in the books, but it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess it's just going to be a small elite club of people that actually like good books. Geocentric pleb again, sends the same comment. I think, Dostoevsky's been one of my favorites for a long time. Flannery O'Connor's great too. We've talked about her a lot. I've done podcasts on all these people, but nobody watches those. Orthodox Your Death, $3. How do I debate my Neoplatonic pagan friend if I'm Orthodox? Are there any videos of yours that I can look at to disprove Neoplatonism? I do have old videos on Neoplatonism, so you could look at those. I critique those. I forget what they're titled, but yeah, you can find those in the archives. Days the King. What's up? It's starting to get a headache, so we'll probably have to call this to a close pretty soon. We've been going for over 3 hours. What's up, Days? Days and Confused?
It's Days the King, but how you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I have two quick questions for you, please, if you don't mind. One on Christology,
okay,
and the other one about the Pope thing. But so I'm reading through St. John Damascus' exact exposition of the Orthodox faith, and on Book 3, Chapter 16, the title is Against Those Who Say That If Man Has Two Natures in Operations, then it's necessary to say that Christ has three natures and the same number of operations. And I read through the chapter, and I'm having a hard time grasping what he means by this. So who would say that Christ has three natures if man has two natures in operations? Could you break that down for me, please?
Let me go to it. You said Book 3, 16. So this is right after he talked about two wills and two energies in Christ. which famously, Book 3, Chapter 15. It was where I direct a lot of people here because it's a great exposition of the essence-centered distinction, particularly in Christology. Now, I'm going from memory. Most of the time when this is coming up, if you have the printed out version, the ex fontis version, I think, they have in the footnotes, typically, I think, I'm going from memory here, things dealing with monothelites and monoenergists. So let's see, he says, individual man is composed of two natures, soul and body, since these natures are unchangeable in him. Is spoken of as two natures. I mean, he's just talking about how at that time, some people talked about the soul as a, quote, nature or a thing or a substance different from the substance or nature of the body. So it's not actually nature in the way that we speak of the divine nature or the human nature. He's just talking, it's just using the word nature to distinguish two different types of existing things. So you might say that angels have an angelic nature, right? So I think he's talking about, going from memory, monophysites and monothelites and monoenergists. But is there a specific section in this that you're asking about? Where is this? I've got it pulled up.
Yeah, I didn't really understand the whole chapter, to be honest, and it's fine. I can just work through it some more and just try to see
So
where he was grasping.
let me see. So let's look at the closing paragraph. If by saying that man has two natures, we are obliged to hold that Christ has three. Oh, okay. So he's saying that if you thought that body was a nature, soul was a nature, and then Christ as divine is another nature, that would be three natures in Christ. But he's pointing out against monothelites that the soul and the body are human nature. They're not two different natures. Does that make sense?
I think I got it. I was more so on the way of thinking that he was referring to, like, if Christ had, if the natures combined into one, it would make one separate nature or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's also a criticism of the monothelites. And so, but he is saying that he's not saying a tertium quid, although there is an argument about tertium quid, a third thing. He's saying that we must not hold that Christ has three natures.
Okay, awesome. I had to dig.
And by extension, Christ also does not have a third blended tertium quid new thing or nature. He has two natures. Human nature is body and soul together. That's the basic body, mind, soul, will. That's human nature in its most basic form. And he's saying that Christ has a divine nature, right? And in the incarnation, the divine and the human come together. It's a divine person with a divine nature, assuming human nature, not a human person. So he has two natures, and he's not three natures, and he's not a tertium quid blended third thing.
Awesome. And I do want to say this real quick, man. I know you have to go, but that series that you're doing on the Orientals, that was great. Like, it was really, really long, and I listened to every hour of it.
Awesome.
I can't wait till you guys do the next one.
Yeah.
And this is my last thing I want to say to you before we go. Could you expound more on the argument that Ubi was saying about the about Pope what's his name? Vigilius?
Vigilius?
Vigilius, yeah. What was that argument again that he couldn't answer? Could you expound on that some more? And thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so basically the Vigilius case is a little bit convoluted. It's a little bit challenging, but essentially, if you have the Szyszynski book, his section on Vigilius is really good here. And let me see if I can find what he says, because he sums it up really well. So basically, Vigilius bends to the emperor and the church. And the West rejects him and ends up schisming. And so it's not papal. And so I'll read what he says. Despite these compliments and expressions of humility, Emperor Justinian made it clear that the power of the Roman bishop must ultimately be subservient to the imperial will. The emperor threatened to banish Pope Agapetus for his refusal to commune with Anthimus of Constantinople. During the reconquest of Italy, General Belisarius deposed the exiled Pope Silverius, and Silverius' successor, Pope Vigilius, fared no better when he refused to accept Justinian's olive branch to the non-Chalcedonians, the condemnation of the three chapters. Pope Vigilius journeyed to Constantinople fully aware that the majority of the Western bishops were opposed to Justinian's scheme, but the emperor required the pope's approval for legitimacy, and he was determined to get it. Over the next several months, Pope Vigilius was bullied, browbeaten, and placed under house arrest. At one point, he was dragged, kicking and screaming from the altar in an effort to make him comply. When the Second Council of Constantinople met in 553, Vigilius refused to attend despite the pleading of the other patriarchs, and so the emperor demanded that he be removed from the diptychs for his unwillingness to bend to the judgment of the church. When the Pope finally accepted the council's decision, the bishops of Istria, Milan, and Aquileia moved to excommunicate Vigilius, precipitating a schism in the West that would last for many decades. The message was clear. The Western bishops no longer believed that the Roman bishop or the Roman position was correct simply because the Roman bishops said it and proclaimed it. Vigilius's lack of vigilance had indeed been a costly situation. So the Vigilius case it basically is just a classic, excellent demonstration that nobody at this time really actually had the Vatican I mindset, and in fact they operated against the Vatican I mindset. So the point is not that Justinian was spotless angel in this whole situation. I mean, he's still a saint in the Orthodox Church, and we're not saying he did everything right, but the point is that this whole story, this whole instance, refutes papal supremacy.
That it was known throughout the East and the West, absolutely. That's their claim, right? But
well, no, they operated against the very idea because Vigilius submits to the council.
I see. I appreciate you.
And why would he if they had the mindset of Vatican I, then why does he submit to the council? He should have been telling the council what to do. But thank you. Carrot. Tim in the chat, you have the ability to call in. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time spamming all your Protestant stuff. Nobody here cares about all that. So you can call in here or you can just move on. Go ahead, Carrot. Unmute.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Curious about your thoughts on the hard problem of consciousness and also what the general Orthodox approach would be to that problem if it had any at all.
The what problem of consciousness?
The hard problem of consciousness, if you're familiar with it.
This sounds like something from like philosophy of mind. I haven't had a philosophy of mind class in like 15 years. So
okay. If you're not familiar with it, that's okay. I would be curious if you had time to look into it, what your thoughts would be. But other than that, that's all I have.
I would say ask FDA. I don't know if he's still here. Actually, FDA's here, so he would be a much better person. Let's see if he's available. FDA, are you there? Because he just taught a epistemology class on his channel. If you guys want to follow him over at Patristic Faith, he just did a whole class on epistemology.
Awesome.
In philosophy of mind. So what was the question of the hard problem?
Yeah, and what the general Orthodox approach would be to it if it had any.
So the hard problem, so if I could just tell the audience, the easy problem is how could something physical remember and act intelligently or whatever. The hard problem is consciousness. So what that means is the reason why it's such a hard problem is that it categorically seems impossible to bridge the gap. And the Orthodox would agree with that consciousness is defined as a first-person subjective. It's what it's like experience that you, the person, and your mind has in various mental states. And brain and body are defined in opposite categories of third-person objective, quantitative, extended through space, etc. So it's not a hard problem for us, Orthodox. It's a hard problem for the materialists, which they can't seem to answer. So we would say, of course, mind's distinct from and conscious. One of the properties of mind being consciousness, the qualitative first-person subjective awareness, of course, it's different and distinct from the body. So that would be the Orthodox answer. So it really is a hard problem, and I would say impossible problem for physicalists or materialists to answer, but not for us. It's like it's just it shows the Orthodox position is correct.
Father Deegan, are Are you doing a whole course on epistemology on your class, or just a couple lectures on your channel?
No, I have a whole course. I could actually build, if you guys want me to. So I build these courses, right? They're 16-week college courses with lectures and assignments. If you want me to, I could build a philosophy of mind one.
Yeah, that would be sweet. I would love that.
Yeah, because I did my PhD in philosophy of mind and philosophy of science. It's just, I haven't built one out yet. I just didn't know if that many people were interested in that. And philosophy of mind's difficult. That's another reason why
really
I don't.
difficult, yeah.
It requires kind of at least cursory kind of introduction to a lot of topics. So, like, let's say it's like prerequisites. You'd have to have logic, philosophy of language, analytic philosophy, philosophy of science, epistemology, just to name a few, before you could actually probably qualify as, to go into philosophy of mind, because it's pulling from all those areas. So when you're reading the literature, if you're not introduced to or have taken some of those courses, you're not going to know what you're reading. It's going to be extreme. And that's what makes philosophy of mind extremely difficult, is there's probably no other topic that pulls from so many different areas.
All right, cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful there, Carrot. Appreciate your question, comment. I know we got several more people. I'm getting kind of tired, getting kind of a headache. I don't know if I got much more energy. Hopefully you guys had fun tonight. I want to remind you too that shout out to FDA for being here. I'll give them some of these super chats. And you guys also, if you are looking for good wacky wild Christmas gifts, I think my Esoteric Hollywood books are kind of out there. If you've got family members that you'd like that like movies, they would like my books. You can also get Jamie's books in the shop at jaysanalysis.com. Otherwise, thank you guys so much. It's been a lot of fun tonight. I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot more streams in the next few days. So look for me and Jamie next to do a movie stream. We're going to do Wife Bots. We might do that tomorrow. And then next we are going to do vampire movies. We've never done vampire movies. I'm not sure.
Hey, Jay, remind me, what was the one that we watched about the dream clinic? I forgot the name. And that would be a good one for you to review, too. That's the reason why I'm bringing it up. But what was the name of the one we watched in Florida?
Come True?
Was it Come True? Where she goes to the, like...
Yeah, that's called Come True. Now... Yeah, I did that with the Psyop Cinema guys.
Okay.
But don't say that that's a vampire movie because you just spoiled it. That's right.
You did it. Not
I know.
Me. I was just saying it was a good... I wanted to show my wife that. That's why I was asking.
It's actually not an unexpected vampire. Yeah, it's called Come True, COME-TRU. It's just an independent horror movie that we did that with the Psyop Cinema guys last year. But Jamie and I are going to do Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which, believe it or not, when we watched that, it was way more esoteric and occultic than I even remembered. So there was a lot more going on than I expected. We're going to do Blade, Underworld, a couple more vampire movies. I forgot what we've got. We may do 2 podcasts because actually there's so many vampire movies, but actually not many vampire movies are good. There's only like a handful that are actually okay. Most of them are pretty much garbage or are kind of goofy. I have done Lost Boys because it's an 80s classic, so we've done that like 2 or 3 times. No, I will not be doing Twilight. In fact, we're going to be making fun of Twilight. It's terrible. We're going to do the ones that are at least halfway decent. There's actually some pretty...
Wasn't there another one called Let This One In or Don't Let This One
In? Yeah,
I
didn't really like that one.
I don't remember it. I just remember that was a vampire movie.
It is a vampire movie. There's another one with Saoirse Ronan called Byzantium, which has nothing to do with Byzantium. It's a vampire movie. It's like those really slow, independent vampire movies that are kind of boring to me. Also, we're not going to do Anne Rice because it's super gay. And I never realized that until I was an adult. And you watch Interview with the Vampires, like, this is all straight up Skittles, dude. Gross, right? So I'm not doing Anne Rice's vampire crap. Actually, Van Helsing has Kabbalah in it. That surprised us. We watched Van Helsing. We watched Underworld. We're doing Blade now, and then we watched Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. It's the best, I think, so far. I can't think of a better vampire movie than the Francis Ford Coppola one. It's probably
well, most people don't know you should do this one. Is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando was actually a vampire movie.
I actually like Commando. It's so preposterous.
I know. I put it on my list. I'm gonna watch it this
week.
week.
You're gonna have fun because the body count is like Arnold's killing somebody like every 5 seconds. There's like 500 body count in that movie. It's just so off the charts 80s action movie. It's a lot of fun.
And doesn't he got like a Matt Frack guy? Like, isn't the final boss like an Australian dude?
I don't even remember who the last guy is. I think, but his daughter is like Shannon Doherty or somebody like, no, it's Alyssa Milano is Arnold's daughter in that. Yeah. Somebody said I should play Witcher. Yeah, people have been recommending that. The thing is, when I do the game streams, like people like the first couple ones, but then they don't like it after that. So nobody tuned in to the part 3 of Silent Hill. But anyway, Dusk Till Dawn. I mean, Dusk Till Dawn is 90s and all that, but it doesn't really have much esoteric